Listen up, Gotham. This is Batman. Tune into the Bat Fanatic podcast with Sammy Warm Hands. And if you don't, I'll be coming for you.
Hey everybody, it's the Dark Knight of Rap, Sammy Warm Hands, and this is the Bat Fanatic podcast. Season 3 starts right now. As always, I'll be joined by my co-hosts Ben and Evan, but I'd like to introduce to you our new sponsor, a good friend of the show, TNK Comics and Collectibles. You can follow the Instagram for claim sales at the Nando Night. That's Nando KNIGHT, the Nando Night, and on shortbox.com/Nando Night. You can catch the in-person debut November 13th in Anaheim at Near Mint Sundays. Now, today we are going to talk about a modern classic from Jeph Loeb, Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair. This is Batman Hush.
Hello, friend.
How do we do this again?
Hello, I'm Sammy Warm Hands.
No.
Welcome.
But Fanatic Podcast.
Well, we're back to, renaming the show and false intros. So, I mean, that's...
Yep, that's how we do it.
So, yeah, Season 3, we kept you guys waiting a long time. So, thanks for being patient with us. Ben and I released the album with our band. Evan did what he did.
He goes by the name Champagne Poppy online. You might have heard of him.
PAPI, yeah.
I've been making moves.
I've been to 3 different cons this summer. Yesterday was Batman Day. You guys will be hearing this a little ways in the future with future Ben. And
I'm going to be so tall.
he's a growing boy. They did this triple feature thing. I was really bummed because I was supposed to go to a show out of town to see Propaganda. And I was like, damn, I only got tickets for Phantasm and Batman 89. And again, this is a band that I really want to see for the first time. But Chris Hanna got COVID, and they postponed the tour. They're going to reschedule it. And I'm like,
You're like, yes!
COVID.
Yeah, COVID.
I get to
Thank
see
you.
Batman Returns now. So I actually watched all 3 movies yesterday.
You're going to love it, I think.
I was at the theater for 8 hours. And
Wow.
and it was like the old prints, too. Not the touched-up, recolored, sound-edited ones. Like, oh, yeah, I miss the amber tones in 89 and some of that shit. And you miss a lot when your sound source is coming from one place across the room.
Yeah.
Like hearing all the sound design and the score of Phantasm, just like envelops you. It's just amazing.
Even with a nice home, even with a nice home theater system, that's like the biggest thing from a movie theater that you don't get at home is the sound.
Yeah.
You can never get a sound system that's that good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What order did you watch them in?
It was Phantasm 89 Returns.
It's cool.
Did you eat some McDonald's just to be in the 90s again?
How many times? Yeah.
No,
How many times
I-
do you go to the bathroom?
Well, I only went between showings.
God bless you.
Good. I'm glad you had a good day.
I did have a good day. And then I got home and I watched an episode of Beware the Batman. And then I watched the next thing that we're going to be reviewing on the show, which is Heart of Ice on Batman the Animated Series. So
Sam is in a dark place.
yeah, yeah. And last week I went to Rose City Comic Con. I got to meet Jim Lee for a second time. I told him we're looking forward to the 20th anniversary of Hush. They're about to reissue the book, and though it's not out at the time we're recording this, we wanted to open the season by talking about it because somehow we've made it this long without going into one of the best Batman books in, modern history anyway. So, Hush, 2002, written by Jeph Loeb, who we've talked about before. Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair, the usual Trinity team on the art, with lettering by Richard Starkings and Wes Abbott. I also got to meet Richard Starkings unexpectedly at Emerald City Comic Con. So I was reading the foreword in the trade that I got when I bought this in 2009. It was from Jeph Loeb, and he was saying that the DC editor from Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Mark Chiarello, he said, hey, we want you to write for the Batman Monthly. It's like, now you're in continuity, now you're part of the world, and you really got to hit those fucking deadlines,
I need you to work Booster Gold into this story.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so he was offered Batman, and as a smart, experienced writer, he said, but who's drawing it? Because they knew that Tim Sale wasn't available. So it's like, wait. So if you're not bringing me my usual guy, then what are we going to do? Well, Jim Lee. Okay, fuck yeah, sign me up. And he kind of talked about how interesting it was that they are opposites. Like, Tim Sale is all shadow and mystique, and Jim Lee is all harsh light details, and all the little stuff.
Treads on the boots.
Yeah. About. And Jim in the afterword talked about he was concerned about that too. Like, how the fuck do I try to follow that? And he goes, and then I read it and I realized he's writing now to my strengths, which is really cool. And so I like that this is familiar, but it's not those other stories at the same time.
I read this as a child, so the art was the thing that probably really stood out to me and stood out more in my memory.
Yeah.
Reading it now as an adult, the similarities between this and Long Halloween are much more clear.
Yeah.
Like just the story structure, it feels very similar to that one. That was completely lost on me as a little kid.
Well, and depending on which order you were exposed,
Well, this is a book this is one of my, go to Barnes & Noble after school and just sit in their chair and read the whole thing there and not pay for it because I didn't have any money.
So when I bought mine and it was all thumbed up on the corners and shit, it was yours.
Yeah.
Okay. I was your loaner.
But, I mean, the art is
Some
what
of the
drew me to the
pages
book.
stick together
This art is so good.
He fell asleep. He was drooling.
with his penis.
Okay. I tried to save it.
No subtlety.
I tried to save it.
1 star. I
You know,
hate
we
this
got that.
podcast.
We got that one review because I've been listening back to the old episodes as I prepare for this, and we got one bad review because of language
and
on
content.
the first season. And we've had 21 5-star reviews on top of that, and we're still not up to where we were before that fucking guy. So, yeah, this is a spoiler show, guys, and this is an explicit rating show. So if you don't like that, please fuck off, and we will
It's
resume.
crude, too. I would describe it as crude.
At times. I do try to edit out the worst ones.
Yeah, you could not swear and it's still crude.
Point taken.
Pretty hard to not be us. Also, I think it's weird to get into something that, you know what it is, and then complain that it is what it is. I went to the drag races and I saw some cars going fast. 1 star.
This wasn't what I was wanting that day.
What is this?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
3 adults talking. I don't know. I did go see the movie Ted in the theater, and in the row in front of me was a family of 4. And my wife and I looked at each other like, oh my God. And 5 minutes in, you could see them turn and look at each other for a second. And then the next scene, the bong comes out and it's all the fucking and shits and all the whatever. And
What kind of teddy bear movie is
they
this?
hastily left the theater. And I was like, you must not have seen a moving video of it. You must have just seen a
Only a
poster
picture.
with the bear.
Mark
and
Wahlberg
thought,
from the Transformer movies. And
yeah,
Marky
and
Mark.
That's
Whatever,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like, man, how did you not know what you were walking
This movie's
into?
disgusting. We're going to go watch a good traditional movie,
Wholesome movie.
The Hateful Eight, playing next door.
Oh
It's all
man,
about togetherness.
Ev, do you remember your first exposure to this book? Is it this, or did you read it before?
It's this right here.
All right,
It's like
You're
like
in the window.
yesterday.
That's
I was
exciting.
yesterday years old when I read this book for the first time.
You're our portal to our younger days.
Yeah, tell us what a 25-year-old thinks of this book. You're 25, right?
I'm encroaching on 40 years old, actually.
I was just realizing that as of next month, I'm no longer mid-30s.
You're late 30s?
I will be, yeah.
Maybe 36.
7. Yeah, I'm 36 now.
Okay, you put the middle 3 in the mids.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's how I see it.
Yeah, okay, that makes.
I'm fresh out of my 20s.
Yeah,
That's how I think of it.
we remember Tide Pods and shit.
So, having almost 2 lifetimes of experience, how did that affect your viewing this book?
I don't know that you guys want to know. I think maybe I'll save that.
You'll dole it out.
Okay. We'll skip our first impressions then. It opens with a brief origin recap, which is interesting for a continuity story, but I like how it goes.
I was like,
Alfred
thanks, I really needed this.
quoting the
Who is
classic
Batman?
cowardly, superstitious line that I assume was not quite so overused back in 2002.
Batman had been out for 60 years at this point, so it
I know,
probably was overused.
But I feel like I've seen it more in the last 5 years than all the years prior. You know? He explains the young Bruce's transformation into Batman, but confessed that he still sees him as that broken child beneath it all. Alfred says that his purpose is to offer Bruce what he lacks the most, and that is love. Nice little, 2-3 page intro, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 2.
608 opens with, having just played Arkham Asylum from Ben Polanski, brought it over to my house. The first,
Yeah, I did. It's one of my best works I've ever done.
from the studio, Ben Polanski.
To be made by one person is impressive, really.
The first scene reminded me of it a bit because he's using that surgical approach that we've talked about, like from Long Halloween, Dark Victory, to take out some pretty high-level dudes. You know, he's talking about, this guy's ex-CIA or special ops or whatever, right? And the way that he uses the path of least resistance to take down each person the most expediently.
This guy's got a bunion on his pinky toe. Step on it.
Poke him in his good eye.
This is Scars McGillicuddy.
Which, this is a
He's
guy
got an ingrown toenail.
he has the knowledge of the Frank Miller Batman without being as sadistic as the Frank Miller, but he knows when to use it, man, and we'll see that later.
The POV of this section
Yeah.
felt very video gamey to me.
What's really cool...
Yeah, the first person panels are dope.
This is going to be one of my notes a little bit later, but all of the characters, all the main characters, they are never introduced by just fully walking into a room. We're always getting little glimpses of him, and it starts with Batman right here. We get a little flourish of the cape or a fist or something like that, and we don't fully see him until he's taken down all the guys. And that's just really cool storytelling visually, you know. I don't know if it was scripted that way or if that's Jim bringing it, but everybody is like that. We get to see what they do before we see who they are, what they look like. So he's there to rescue a young heir who was kidnapped. He miscalculates by, quote, 11 seconds, he says, and gets caught on the way out by Killer Croc. And as they fight in the sewer, a multi-million-dollar ransom disappears.
Croc is looking real weird.
Looks like an
off the bat.
anteater.
At first, I thought this is an interesting redesign.
Yeah.
And then that ended up not being the case.
Yeah, because they talk about he's been infected with something that's making him less human. And
both physically and
mutating.
mentally.
Yeah.
When whoever this,
Jim Lee.
guess it's just the GCPD, I guess, they come in afterwards. What?
No, he was just joking. Whoever this artist is that I've never heard of.
Batman. The character's called Batman.
Oh. Okay,
Okay. Whoever this no pupil cape guy, whatever. The GCPD is there, and they're taking Edward. The one GCPD guy is like, "Easy, son. We're gonna take you home now." And he goes, "But
I want to stay with
I want to stay with Batman." And I was like, "That's Sam." if ever given the chance, Sam would be like, "But no."
Emergency workers or Batman.
That's just me at the Jim Lee signing, like, "Sir, there's people in line behind you. I really can't go."
Yeah.
No, it is like the end of the Batman, though, when he starts to save people, you know, and there's the girl who's about to be airlifted away, and she's like hanging on to him, and he's kind of like looking at her like, it's okay, go with the fucking paramedics, you know.
I thought his commentary, Batman's internal commentary, was interesting when he's thinking about Superman. He's like, if Superman grabbed this kid, he would have given them that smile that makes everybody at ease.
Yeah, he says that Superman would have been better suited essentially to put him at ease. But sorry, you got me.
Yeah. And I thought about that when I was reading it, because I think about things when I read them.
Do you?
Yeah, sometimes.
So weird.
At least when you're going to have to talk about it later.
Yeah. The rest of my life.
Did you
Turn the
read it,
brain
Ben?
off. I probably
What
read
happened on this
Yeah.
page?
Batman punched people.
It's a safe assumption.
Because at first I was like, well, maybe it's just like bad writing. And it's not bad writing. But like maybe it's bad writing because if we're supposed to believe that half of his life he's Bruce Wayne or pretending to be Bruce Wayne. And so the idea that he can't do that stuff when he's Batman... At first, I was like, they're overlooking his ability to do this all the time.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it a little more, and it was like, well, maybe it's the idea that he's so fractured that when he's Batman, he is Batman. And he lacks the ability to be that way in this role.
While he's in that character.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Because, I mean, if you think about just people you know in life who are, let's say, very introverted and shy, and then you get them with close friends and family, and, you know, they're laughing and joking and loud and engaged and everything, you know, and you have sort of those different parts of your personality and when they can come out and when they can't. And that's one thing I've always related to about Batman is that he has sort of a hard line.
Batman can't say congratulations.
And now he's just making fun of me. Like yesterday, I never said Happy Batman Day because I will not be told what to say. But I said Batman Day isn't over yet, so here's
It is Batman.
I didn't tell
pictures.
anybody else to have a Happy Batman Day.
Yeah.
'Cause no one's going to tell me to have a Happy Batman Day.
I just don't like those, like Secretary's Day. It's 4th grade science teacher's day. It's like, just stop making shit up, But if they offer me a triple feature at the movie theater, now that I can get behind. You can do that at any time. It doesn't have to coincide with a day. Just saying.
And this is how you're living anyways, like...
All I do is consume Batman anyway? Is that what you mean?
I mean, every day is Happy Batman Day for you.
For real.
And also the specific days to, if you're like, this is Worldwide Recycling Day, so everybody just recycled on one day, but then the rest of the day was...
Saved it up.
Yeah,
But this isn't the
burning it or
purge.
something.
We just do this all the time. Come on.
Yeah, that'd be way better if people just killed people all the time.
Batman correctly assumes that Catwoman stole the money, and a rooftop chase ensues that mirrors her introduction in The Long Halloween, which I like.
Yeah. Also felt like, which is intentional, Under the Red Hood.
There's a bit of Under the Red Hood throughout this, which makes me wonder how much of an influence this was on that.
It must have been, because the guy who wrote Under the Red Hood, the movie, also wrote the comic, and that, I'm fairly certain that comes out of this.
Is that Judd Winnick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that comes, even this depiction of certain characters later on directly influences that.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me, and I guess we'll talk about those scenes when we get to them. Batman questions Selina's motives here, saying that she's mostly gone straight, and this seems out of character, right? So as he's flying across the void between buildings after her, his line is cut, which we know that was a big deal in the Red Hood.
It bummed me out that he called it the bat rope to himself.
Yeah. He tries to catch himself on a gargoyle, winds up breaking his shoulder. First, my body betrays me. Then my city, he says, because he kind of catches like that cliffhanger fucking one arm hang, and then the gargoyle crumbles underneath him, and he lands in Crime Alley.
Well, that shot of him on the ground, having that thought to himself, looking up, like his face, that's such a perfect shot of like someone kind of losing it somewhere else mentally.
There are a couple panels throughout this book, and this is one of them, where Jim, who draws one of the best, most iconic Batmans ever, right? And this cemented that fact, this book. But there are a few times in this where he's able to not deviate from that and yet show us Bruce Wayne in the cowl. And I feel like that's what I'm looking at in this panel of him on the ground, is we are seeing Bruce fucked up kind of out-of-body experience moment, I really like that. They're able to humanize him in the suit.
Yeah, because you're right. The Jim Lee Batman is so iconic and not like human or vulnerable looking most of the time.
Speaking of which, we talked about, in the early episodes, what do we think of the bat suit? Whatever. Like, this is fucking iconic, right? But another episode I had mentioned, at what point does he start to have, the cowl isn't just like a half circle opening at the mouth, right? But it goes back a little bit up on the cheekbone, right? Has that little point.
cutouts.
And as I'm reading this, I'm going, shit, was that Jim's thing? Because he's always done it. Now that I actually am thinking about that trait and applying it to him, he's always done that. Now, a lot of people have aped him and been encouraged to ape him if they were going to get published, right?
Sure.
If they're going to get work. So I wonder if that is part of how that caught on. Maybe a listener who's more familiar with like the early 2000s, late 90s canon can tell me, was that style of cowl opening popular before Hush?
At least this would date it. That way you could
You have to go earlier.
Yeah, at least you could find something around approximate time. Go with
like I'm going to open No Man's Land or something and see like
go
were
with
they
a
doing it
different
then?
title around the same time and see if anybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
This thing, I I don't know how he arrived at it, but Jim repeatedly does this like reverse live long and prosper with his hands.
Oh,
he always does. Yeah, he always does like the middle ring finger conjoined move, and I don't know how he arrived at that.
Finger blasting.
He does it all the time. Yeah, that's true.
He's like, what do you mean? These
Bam,
are
bam,
normal
bam.
hands. And then you look at Jim Lee's hands and the two middle fingers.
Yeah.
You know, when I was
They're webbed in the middle.
When I was watching Batman Returns in the theater last night, because, you know, on the bigger screen, you're getting all the details right, and I'm just watching DeVito's hand while Penguin is writing. He's always writing, right? He's working on his list of names. And
Babies.
I'm like, well, my first thought was, okay, with the prosthetics, how hard is it to actually use a fountain pen with those flippers on, right? And then I thought, well, no, that's about the right finger configuration. And then I thought, well, wait a second. How can this motherfucker learn to read? And then I was like, all right, circus, got it. Okay, anyway.
Penguins taught him.
I was all caught up in that moment for a second.
Yeah, like a Family Guy montage with him in a classroom with penguins.
The issue ends with Selena delivering this ransom. It's not for herself. It is to Poison Ivy. We see like the lips and what she's saying before we get the full character reveal on the last page. And she has Selena, and we can assume Croc, under her control.
In her thrall is the cooler way to say that.
How do you spell that?
THRALL.
Nice.
Okay, so 609 opens with people surrounding Batman's body in Crime Alley. These are not people looking to help. They're people with their bats and chains ready to stomp. They test the limits of the suit's defenses while he's knocked out. They're getting electrocuted. They're getting gassed. This is all very entertaining. But Oracle puts out a distress call, and Huntress shows up, which seems like everyone's last choice, but she takes down everyone right away.
Who is Huntress?
Well,
Said noob Evan.
Huntress is an interesting character.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne and Catwoman get married and have a daughter, and she's their daughter. And then when they did the Crisis in the 80s and combined everything and like kind of sheared off deadweight story-wise, she became a side character, unrelated. She's like the daughter of a crime family or something like that. And I want to say she's introduced in the mid-90s maybe, or reintroduced. She's the first person to wear the new Cassandra Cain Batgirl outfit.
Now that
really?
in your hands is a recent one. That's a Batman story with Huntress. It's in Detective. It's part of The Neighborhood. And I was thinking about adding that on this season. It's a really cool character design, I'll tell you that.
I feel like Dan is kind of new Jim Lee to me.
Dude,
and I
he's
actually
fucking crushing it.
even feel like this about
Dan
Jim
Mora
Lee.
you're talking about?
Yeah. Like Dan has quickly become one of those dudes that I just want to see his take on
Everything.
like everybody's characters. Like,
Dude,
please
like-
redesign their suit.
The way that his Batman looks, the way that his characters like in the suit look so good, but then also the female characters and their facial expressions. Like so often you get a guy who's really good at one and does all female characters, or really good at the other and does all the big brute characters, right? And man, he just has both.
Yeah, he's super good. I love that you can't see this audience, but in this cover, it's like a 50-50 vertical split, but Huntress.
It's kind of like the Hush cover, honestly.
Yeah, I
of
love
Batman and
that
Hush.
they're both,
it's
grabbing
Batman
their
and Huntress.
equivalent gloves and pulling them down. So you have like the finger crossover and the hand crossover. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Usually they would just split a face.
So anyhow, people are surrounding. Huntress steps in, takes everybody down. She puts his body into the Batmobile and says to Oracle, he feels broken. Like it just...
I just imagine like a
just like a
bag
sack.
of chicken bones.
Yeah.
in liquid.
Yeah, wet, gross. And the last panel shows that Hush was observing from a nearby rooftop.
I looked
Who we
at
don't
that.
know yet. We haven't heard that name yet.
We haven't. And I'm going to use that
Boris
as we
Karloff.
go because it's a long time before that name is actually said aloud. But we know from the cover of the book. Anyway.
I looked up that quote, and that is also Aristotle.
Yeah, they're all. I looked up that one so I could pretend like I knew it. Yeah, that's Aristotle. You guys don't read Aristotle?
Totally. Yeah.
It gets me through the day.
You didn't read that issue of Detective Comics by Aristotle?
Philosophy.
In the scene where they're trying to get his cowl off, I wanted to point out both the color work of the gas
And it's similar to Batman 89. Is that what you liked about it? Because
No,
that's your
fuck
favorite
Yeah,
movie?
how he fell and he's in a trash pile.
No.
This felt very familiar.
No, that's not what I wanted to point out.
Hush was overlooking, like, Vicky with the camera, you know?
These guys
He's
are
like,
like,
"I'm Hush."
Oh my God, is that Michael Keaton?
No, none of
his
that is
wallet.
what I wanted to point out. I didn't want to point any of that out. The gas that comes out of his cowl and then the electricity that comes off it,
Yeah.
I like what I'm assuming is to be a very digital effect or digital colors, but how the gas is a bright, bright green and then the electricity is a bright, bright blue against everything else in the scene is almost the same color,
Yeah.
which the first time, when the scene is established, I almost thought that was a negative. Like, this is kind of a dull looking scene, but those effects stand out because of that. Everything else is gray and like characters and background all kind of meld together because of that. Those effects just really stand out.
I love Alex Sinclair's blue, gray, green, cool palette in this book. And then it makes those things jump. Like even in the first issue, when we see Ivy's green and her red hair, like just pop, it's like a big reveal just that she's in the room because she stands out like
Against
a sore
everything,
thumb,
yeah.
you know? And there was another scene pretty early on here that was using like reds in a really interesting way. Oh, right. Okay, it's coming up.
I think that's one of the coolest things about digital colors is that, say, in the past, if somebody was looking through a window, maybe the objects on the other side of the window would just still be inked in black, but then all the other space would be blue, like
Yeah.
it's glass. Or they might color those black lines blue so that you're like seeing the black lines
Oh,
through
it's diffused.
through the blue thing. Yeah, but the way they can pull that kind of transparency and translucence off now with digital colors is like way cooler, as if you're actually seeing something behind something that's see-through, or what they can do with light effects like the Batmobile's headlights, which clearly weren't drawn by the artist, they just
Yeah.
get added in.
In the afterword, Jim talked about how this was sort of early on in digital coloring.
It
and
seems like
that
it.
Alex's work on this and evolution through it. Like if you look at some of these early ones, you're like, "Huh, that's pretty muted," right? Versus how vibrant it becomes throughout. That did help kind of set the bar for like what could be done.
Well, another connection, and I think we see it a little later because it becomes a daytime scene maybe. This really reminded me of the beginning of the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run of both his art style, which I didn't make that connection. They just have that similar kind of like, it's not an anime aesthetic, but something about the designs reminds me of that, of like small eyes and big jaws and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that also combined with the colors.
Cheeky faces.
Cheeky.
Yeah, lots of
yeah.
meat
Yeah.
on the face.
Yeah. That combined with the oranges we're going to see in the daytime scene later, and then also the digital effects overlaid. The scene it really reminds me of is like when they're at the big meeting and there's like the blue computer graphics of what they want Gotham to look like. This just looks like that to me. And I know it's the other way around because this came first, but like
Yeah.
the similarities there. And Greg Capullo was active in this era too, I would imagine. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was on Spawn back
Yeah,
then.
maybe Spawn still. Little things. One, operating room scene. Doctor, bloody glove hands, middle fingers together.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, but his gloves, like the way that they're.
They're fused together. That's what it is.
Yes, yeah, the fingers are. Everybody's fingers are fused together. But, make these black lines into like a peach color to show that they're in gloves. That's super cool.
All right, so moving along, because it's a long story. Ivy gives the money to Hush off screen, which we can assume because we see the dotted line speech bubbles that Richard Starkings is applying here. And when we look at her character design of Ivy's full figure, it really feels like an homage to Tim Sale. The way that there's just a little bits of leaves and vines all over the place, and it's taking what he had done in an almost grotesque way at times and
Yes.
applying it to a more
fucking hot design.
okay, yes. Yep. I
there
didn't
was-
have a gentler way to say it. I
Yeah,
let
we're
you
barely
say
out
it.
of the 90s. This is when everything's fucking hot.
True.
There was one part that gave me shivers with like somebody has some vines around their neck to show that they're like being kind of controlled, but it gave me
I
all
remember
sorts
you
of,
really didn't like that before.
yeah. It gave me like
Nails on a chalkboard feeling. kinda.
yeah, it gave me like leaf sweater PTSD. Like,
I'm sorry to bring you back to that.
yeah.
Back at the cave, Alfred assesses the damage on Bruce's body on an operating table and quickly decides this is not within his skill set.
That 2-page spread is actually one of the things that is burned into my memory. Because I remember the story from this book, the broad strokes.
Yeah.
But I didn't have a lot of other big visual memories. But that scene in particular vividly stands out in my memory of just like fucked up Bruce lying on the table and Alfred standing over him. And then the digital heads-up display they're using to like diagnose his problems.
Show his skull and
Yeah.
stuff.
Which is cool because I instantly thought of Nightfall. Do you remember that shot where it's Alfred and Jean-Paul and Tim Drake, and it's almost a Sin City thing. It's overhead. There's a lot of black, and then there's just a lit area of the hospital bed in the Batcave, and the three of them standing around him. And I was like, oh, this is kind of like if you were really thrown into that room, like what it would really look like if you were standing bedside in that with them. Because they even mention Chandra Kinsolving, who was his doctor in that, like, oh, I could call her. And Alfred's like, I don't think she's right in the head. And then Bruce starts tapping his fingers because he can't communicate. As far as they know, he's fucking dead to the world. And he's tapping his fingers, and Alfred starts to realize a pattern. Oh, is that Morse code? Oh, shit, that's Thomas. That's weird. He thinks I'm his dad, operating on him or whatever. And then he thinks, oh, surgeon. Thomas Elliot, maybe? I don't know if it's implied that he tapped out the full name, but...
He's going to say, tomorrow I'll be better. It's like, oh, Tommy Elliot, get this guy to surgery right now.
He just keeps cutting him off. Shut up.
Tommy tomorrow. Call Tommy tomorrow. So Thomas Elliot, the famous surgeon, flies in from Philly to save Bruce after his quote-unquote car accident.
In Westfield.
A flashback shows Thomas and Martha lovingly watch over Bruce and Tommy as they play chess or something.
This is a made-up game. This is a fictional.
They refer to it once as war.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, and they look down and they think, "Wow, I think our little weirdo loner kid finally found like a friend for life," is what they said. A cocky-ass Thomas Elliot walks out of the operating table. This is what you were talking about, where he had his gloves up. And he tells jokes to the press. Like, oh, yeah, I fucking nailed that shit. No, what do you expect?
I don't know if Mr. Wayne will ever play the violin again.
Yeah.
His hands are really fucked.
Yeah.
But I did a good job with everything else.
And the last page shows Bruce's recovery on the front page of the newspaper. And we see, I assume, again, Hush's hands rip this apart to make confetti. I assume in anger.
Scrapbooking.
Yeah.
It's paper mache. Did Bruce ever play the violin?
No.
Yeah, you don't remember.
No, I don't.
So in his origin story,
Originally, they weren't going to see Zorro. They were going to his violin performance.
It's actually the fiddle. Tommy got it wrong. But still.
the devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. All right, 610 opens with Batman visiting Croc in his cell. This is the part where I was talking about the fucking vibrant reds and everything looks way different than what we've seen. He becomes agitated, Croc does. He breaks out of his cell, which is apparently what Batman and then we see Amanda Waller had planned. They were provoking this. He had put an implant in Croc's spine when he was fighting him or something.
I want to say
they want to track him.
And granted, he's a huge monster man, so maybe he feels things a little different, especially after he just got beat up.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, it's a tracker the size of a hat pin. Mm-hmm. Hat pin is like a 5-inch long piece of metal. You would notice that if that was anywhere in your body.
I don't know. If he's like 8 feet tall, it's a pretty small percentage.
So it could be different. But
yeah, he's got scales.
To have that in your spine.
It's got thick dinosaur skin, Ben.
Yeah. It had to be so big in order to perforate his epidermis.
Thomas checks in on Bruce at home, and Alfred provides the cover story. We see a flashback of a young Tommy at their door, in a similarly rainy setting, coming to Alfred and saying, his parents were in a car accident. They do a lot of things in this story where we're mirroring past and present, or we're mirroring two different characters. Very fucking effective every time.
They do a pretty good job of introducing this character and trying to insinuate him as be like, no, he's been here all along.
Yes.
This isn't somebody we've invented for the story. This is a character who's part of this world and connected in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tommy. You know, the game that's not quite chess.
Bruce was equally cocky in this flashback, saying that his dad's the best surgeon and everything will be fine, right? Tommy's parents in a car accident. Thomas Wayne being the surgeon. Don't worry about it. My dad fucking rules, right? I'm 9 years old. When Tommy's dad doesn't make it, he gives Bruce a smack to the face and blames him for lying. Back in the present, Batman and Oracle together are tracking Croc when someone off-screen blows off the front wheel of the Batmobile on the driver's side. He remarks, much like the whole thing in Under the Red Hood about no one can cut my lines, that it would be nearly impossible to blow off the wheel of the Batmobile, but he doesn't also really have time to fucking think about the meaning of that or deal with it in any way. He has to just keep chasing Croc. He doesn't want to lose the mission.
He is in the middle of a car crash, so it's hard to...
Also,
But he's not like using the crash to stop and go, okay, how did that happen? What's going on? You know, it's like, nope, we're just going to leave that wreckage back there. I'll come and get it later.
But they also don't, they only revisit that in the, like...
Recap.
Yeah.
Putting the pieces together montage.
Yeah, putting the pieces together like, oh, there's a deeper meaning to your tire explosion. But they also don't explain, like... How that happened still. Like...
That's true.
Yeah, just what... So, villain has access to super bullets, like what it...
And he's the best shot in the world.
Yeah, and also he's an incredible marksman.
It's best shot, at one point, the famous Batman villain.
Best shot.
Best shooter boy.
At one point, he's going, well, wait, what about Deadshot? What about, all these people who, who could have done that? So he does question it, but we don't see the mechanics of it.
Yeah, that's just the logistics. Never mind.
Far-fetched, if you ask me.
Yeah,
And his impression here is that someone really does not want him to catch Croc. Now, when he does...
World's greatest detective.
Croc is about to...
Nobody's in my way on this. If I had to...
Croc is about to kill Catwoman for stealing his money. She's trying to explain that, hey, Ivy set us both up. I've had nothing to do with this, really. Batman swoops in to save her. And Waller's feds or whatever, these helicopters show up, and... essentially Batman got what he kind of needed, but she kind of broke the deal and just swooped him up in a net and takes Croc away.
This section I also want to point out, this is where I just wrote in my notes, Richard Starkings.
Yes.
Just appreciating the narrating bubble, the way that text looks, the standard speech, and then also Croc speech. Just again, like the being able to do so many things in a way that is innocuous. So like you don't notice because he's doing it perfectly.
There are some pages of this book that get too wordy, particularly towards the end. But
not his fault. He didn't write it.
What I'm saying, with a less experienced letterer, it would be way more noticeable. Because it really wasn't until I'm like, wow, this is covering like 20% of the page before I really started to be like, oh, this is
a little too much book. Not enough comic here.
There's a lot going on top of this art.
I like when characters are given like a slightly different, some visualization of their character or voice that fits them. When
like a Two-Face or something.
Yeah, when Two-Face's letters are weird, or when Croc's speech looks monstrous or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, you don't want it to be like super huge, but I like when not like the sound word fits the action, but the intensity. The letters are bigger because the dude is yelling, and the way that this looks fits
it's
the
got
character
like red
itself.
outlines with green shading on it. I mean, it's
it's cool.
And how many times have you been reading a book where, it'll change scene at the end of the page, right? There'd be a quote that starts the next scene before you see the visual, right?
It looks like a giant
Like
Johnson.
Yeah, right. So movies do that shit all the time, right? But in a comic, you can't really differentiate whose voice that is if it's just the same plain text, right? And so,
Oh, it was Aristotle. Okay.
right, yeah. I like when they do those character-defining looks for the speech bubbles too. I think that's really cool.
Or even in the Batman Superman one, how the bubbles, not the bubbles, but the
inner
thought
monologue.
bubble, yeah, they would just be colored differently, or they would start with a logo. Like top left, it would be Bat logo.
And a blue box.
And, yeah, exactly. And you're like,
Red Hood's face. Okay, he's talking now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that's also Jeff Loeb, so I wonder if any of that is scripted.
I don't remember the character's name, but Luther's aide or whomever that is. It was at that point that I realized, like, oh, this is simultaneously Ed McGuinness's Batman, Superman, Luther's, because I haven't read a bunch of other stuff.
President
That
Luther.
is-
Yeah, it's around that time.
Is that
yeah.
timeline that I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I get where we're supposed to be at.
The kind of stuff we wouldn't see in Long Halloween because it was like, didn't have
Years
to worry about
before that, too.
continuity.
Yeah, yeah.
So at the end of this book, it's worth noting that it sort of solidifies the romance of this series where Selina gives Batman a kiss as she's grateful for being saved. We get a lot of that through this story, and honestly, as soon as I finished it, I was like, damn, I gotta read that Batman Catwoman stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to.
It reminded me
Do
of
that.
that, especially because Lois comes in a minute, and that's a dynamic in there too.
The three-way scene, yeah. It's pretty hot.
Yeah, took me a while to read that. I wanted to point out in this scene that I really liked, especially because they did such a good job of making Croc into a monster.
Yeah.
The nice little bit at the end where he's like, you don't understand. I need this money to fix what's wrong with me. I can't control this.
I'm not trying to be like this.
Yeah, I hate this. And then both that of like a moment of humanization and then Batman
Waller's
recognizing
like,
that.
who cares, Dick? Go back to yourself.
I got this team of people. I'm going to blow your head off if you don't go kill these foreigners. No, but that he has that revelation to Batman, and then Batman even himself. I wrote it down. He's like, the look in his eye, the monster had overcome him, of like seeing that in him, that constant quality that makes Batman special, of empathy and understanding. Even the people he's kicking the shit out of,
Yeah.
he understands them and he feels for them. And even that reflection of himself of like going too far into what he's become.
Yeah. I feel so bad snapping this man's clavicle.
Kicking him in the eyeball.
I can really imagine what that's going to feel like
Yeah.
as his skull is
You'll
concussed
never be able to see again.
for the 6th time.
Turn him into a bag of chicken bones and petroleum jelly.
611 opens with lots of Bruce Wayne throughout this issue. This is not the most action-packed issue. He visits Metropolis, runs into Thomas, who is concerned about Bruce's being out and about. He's not resting, minding his recovery. They briefly reminisce about when they were in Metropolis as young kids, as you mentioned, and witnessing the Green Lantern.
I wrote Al Jolson because I don't remember what that Green Lantern's name is. It's not Al Jolson. That's a completely...
That's a Beach Boy, isn't it?
No, that's Al Jardot or Jardine.
Jardine.
Yeah. Al Jolson is the jazz singer. But it was something like that.
Al Borland,
No.
the Green Lantern.
Hal
Leonard.
is the modern Green Lantern, and this guy was like
Yeah, Hal Jordan.
Andrew something. Or
Dismukes.
Yeah.
This part also starts with another Samism to me, and
What did I say?
narration. He goes, Metropolis.
Oh,
It is very different from Gotham City, and for that alone, I try to avoid coming here.
all the bright colors. and the
saying,
fresh air.
I'm not familiar with that.
Sunshine.
they light it up like
that's
it's
a good
like they
reason
think
for
it's
me.
important.
Yeah.
It's the second time in one of these flashbacks that a young Tommy says, Green Lantern's going to win. You have to think like your enemy.
Also, that guy's name is the Icicle. And I was, even this blurb right here, that bad guy is the Icicle. He'll never win. I'm like, his name is terrible.
Not with a name
He's-
like that,
Yeah,
you won't.
he's destined for a D role. I love this old Green Lantern design too.
Yeah. It makes me want to. We need to read Kingdom Come at some point.
Yeah.
But
I thought about it last year, and I just quickly skimmed it. I was like, man, Batman's barely into this. We better push
he's
push it back
fundamental to
later.
the story.
Yeah.
He's not in it a lot, but he's fundamental to the story.
Well, what I've been reading this year is also Dan Mora, but Mark Waid's World's Finest, the Batman Superman stuff that's out now. It would be cool at one point to read Kingdom Come one episode and then the next one do the new World's Finest and kind of see the evolution of that, because I'm really liking it. It's batshit crazy like all Batman Superman stuff is, but it's very clever. I mostly bought it for the art, but there's times where I'm like, that's fucking genius. Like, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, the Batman that's with Superman is borderline a different Batman that exists.
And this is also kind of set out of time, and so it's not current continuity either.
He has
It's
a gun.
just-
He shoots people.
No, but it's sort of just like you can take this wherever you want. It's Batman and Robin and Supergirl and, anyway.
This is actually the section where I made the note of similarities between Jim Lee and Greg Capullo, and also
Well, yeah, because this is the whole like plainclothes issue.
in his bright oranges and lots of like the digital colors, but then also Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld. I think Rob Liefeld is a less balanced artist as far as like what his strengths and his weaknesses are, but I see the same design ideas and like faces and bodies between the two of them, like that, the hyper muscular, not like huge, but extremely ripped and shredded, square face, square jawed, big like teeth gritting kind of expressions and faces. Like Wolverine from this era kind of looks the same too.
And wasn't Rob part of Image with Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just even in the details, to me, like their way of hatching and cross hatching is like a school of 90s comic book artists. There's a real similarity between them.
One thing that's interesting about the cross hatching is you look at a page, let's say with Bruce Wayne on it, there will be slightly smaller panels leading down the page to a larger panel, right? And as you get the close-up of the person, there's so much more shading every time he does a close-up, which is very interesting to me. I almost like the mid-size ones better than the ones that are like just super over-rendered at times.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that...
I mean, that shot of Thomas Elliott looks really good.
No,
though.
I'm not saying that. I just mean like this middle where he's 3 feet from the camera versus like inches from my face.
Yes.
The one thing I don't love about this style is just that I interpret details to mean something, not just to be details for the sake of details.
Arbitrary.
So an old person gets many lines because their face is wrinkly. A baby gets no lines because their face is smooth. I get shading based on lighting and stuff, but just the in and out of details, no details, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Doesn't reinforce the characters.
Here's
Yeah.
a great example. Okay, so this is Bruce and Thomas in the car in Metropolis in the scene we're talking about. So if you look at Bruce here in the middle of the page and then look at Bruce here at the bottom, there's so much more going on.
It made me think of like Ren and Stimpy or SpongeBob, where
Ultra
they do the
close-ups.
super zoom in and it's like a painting. All this stuff.
Disgusting.
Like
Well,
what's,
yeah, 'cause
what's his
they'll-
line in that part?
It'll go to like the
He's like Harumph.
the background paintings. The
Yes.
animated series does that sometimes where
Yeah.
for a moment it'll show you a character that's part of the background painting, which is a different team than the people who are doing.
But it's
moving
also
cells.
usually like indicative of like a change of tone. Like Ben says something to me and then it's like boom on my face and I'm like Ben. And
You look
Well, no,
30
it's not
years
at all.
older
'Cause
and-
right here,
What's
he's
his
talking
line?
about like not caring for your recovery. He just says, "I take good care of myself." That's all it is.
to me he's like I take good care of myself.
I was only comatose 6 days ago,
Yeah.
and I just got in a fight yesterday.
Shut
I'm
up.
doing a really good job.
Yeah, shut up, Tommy. I'm taking great care of myself.
Well, as you're mentioning that, this shot is another one of those. It's Batman talking to Amanda Waller after they've sort of talking about they intentionally released Croc, and they're like, "I hope your plan works, you idiot."
Yeah.
But this is one of the ones that to me seemed intentional because this Batman seems almost Dark Knight Returns Batman. More aged. The hatching
Yeah.
works to show a weathering that I feel like is on the character versus
sure.
a lot of the other ones like you're talking about that don't seem to be that. They're more just like,
It works a lot more again in costume than on some of the plainclothes ones where I'm like, what are you showing me?
yeah.
He does also seem to do, though that panel is contrary to what I'm saying right now, that Bruce seems to get less lines and Batman gets more, just to, I don't know, show the grittiness of the character or something
Yeah.
like that.
He's got the Affleck thing where he He shaves as Bruce Wayne, but not as Batman.
Yeah, he goes in and out on a daily basis.
Don't we all?
Yes. What?
At the Daily Planet, Bruce surprises Lois with flowers, and he asks to borrow her computer while he's in town so he can check in with Oracle. He notes the similarity between Jim Gordon and Perry White, brilliant investigators with a blind spot for their caped partners. I like that. Again, sort of Loeb's Batman, Superman stuff. The duality between the two of them. I just love the way he writes them together. Bruce has Selina on his mind all day. She's constantly distracting him throughout this middle section of the story. When she pages him, pager, she has a great line about how Ivy made me do things I may have been prone to do, but that's my decision. No one gets to violate me like that. I like that Selina is still a take no shit, nobody's going to fuck with me, I play by my own rules kind of person.
It's an interesting little beat about consent of like, maybe I would have done it, I probably would have done it, but the fact that
you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah,
you're like,
you're not my real dad.
Yeah.
But that comes in a confrontation later where it's more like nobody hits me. Like, that's the last time you ever do that. And
nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Little Ben Stiller.
I think it's just seeing in type, but for the first time, it says Lois and Clark, and I was like, Lewis and Clark? Who came up with this?
We did a play in elementary school about Lewis and Clark, and I was really bummed.
You were like really excited at first?
You come in like a Superman costume.
It's going to be Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain.
Yeah.
Everybody else is wearing beaver skin hats. What? This right here looks very Natalie Portman-esque to me, and I like it.
Describe to the audience. This is Batman and Catwoman.
This is, Batman, Catwoman on a rooftop. Never been on one of those before.
So this
Having
is
a
when
heated discussion.
this is during the consent conversation.
He's giving her like the tracker or whatever it is, and like holler at me if you get in in trouble. He gives her the little button
Prior to that,
fingers.
got it.
What's the old people
Pager.
like?
Life alert.
Yeah, he gives Catwoman a life alert.
I can't get up.
Yeah,
That's basically what happened when Huntress came. Actually, he had the life alert for
yeah.
Oracle.
If you slip in
No,
the
not
shower,
Huntress.
just holler at your boy. But yeah, I don't know this panel in particular. She's holding it between her fingers, and her face looks very much like Natalie Portman, and it made me think
Who was
that,
like 9 at the time.
but it also made me think that she could make a nice looking Catwoman.
Oh, totally.
Cool.
But it's also just, I think, again, of this like 90s style.
Yeah.
In which Jim Lee does a very good job of like,
I mean, when we talk about 90s style, I mean, he's kind of the dude.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, just the way he draws faces, like his version of women, they all look like supermodels. Like the features, like the angular cheeks, the lips, all of that.
waistlines.
Yeah. Because I'm looking at Lois Lane and seeing it's the same thing. And that's
Yeah.
not in a bad way.
and
It's
not like
iconic.
you can't distinguish who the characters are, because
Yeah.
not like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely has style for days. There's a phenomenal splash page in here of Batman on the hood of the Batmobile, I think, as the headlights shine at the camera. Yeah, right there. And man, that is one of my favorite. Like, there's at least one page in each book where it's just like, and greatest of all time, here you go. Enjoy.
Check, please.
Yeah, you know,
he's like
like
Marilyn
it-
Monroe. He's standing on the grate and the.
Yeah, it's just the
Wind's
character
blowing the cape.
Yeah,
I love, like-
panties in there.
The silhouetting, it's so good.
Yeah,
and
looks
he
like a badass.
has a couple shots where it's like a side profile or like a 3/4 angle of his face. Seeing it on the page, I'm like, oh my God, that's the basis for every Batman head sketch that he does to this day, is that right there. Like, I'm seeing it the first time he did it on the page, you know?
You arrived and you stayed there.
That's my thing. I found it. Well, some of those too, like the Jim Lee shots of Batman, like on a gargoyle side profile looking out, like they use that in the Arkham games. That's like the start screen, and they realize this imagery works and will connect with people.
Catwoman feigns mind control and approaches Ivy, but she doesn't buy it. They fight it out. When Batman is about to break it up, the whole fucking place explodes and Superman bursts through. And there's this great sort of like, as you start to hear a rumbling right before it happens, Batman's kind of like, oh, fuck, not now. You know?
It's like you at the movie theater.
My tummy!
Your stomach's.
Oh, God, not now.
Catwoman smacks Ivy or something. Ivy says, There's money, so much money that not interested, but I have been curious. Do you bleed green? And your face already has blood on it.
I thought of this sweet-ass line.
Yeah, red blood.
Wasted.
Yeah, but man, I wish I hadn't hit you already.
That's the opposite of when you get surprised by somebody and then like an hour later you think of the comeback because you weren't ready for it, right? But she was like going there thinking, I know what I'm going to fucking say.
No, you're the idiot.
Yeah, I just punched her too fast.
Yeah, so Superman under Ivy's control. That's the end of the issue. Pretty big fucking mic drop.
And that's another kind of long Halloween shot. That's what that reminds me of with Ivy on Superman.
Oh,
Just
that's
like the seduction, mind control.
That
kind
Evan
of look.
loves so much that he has framed in his bathroom.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking. I couldn't remember who got mind controlled, but it's totally
Soups?
Yeah, it's
This
it's
little-known
Clark
character.
with the it's Clark with the
This
vine.
forgettable
Oh,
guy.
Shut up.
All right, 612.
Icicle.
Batman and Catwoman dive underwater to escape, and they split up. Batman fights Superman underground in these lead-lined tunnels with a kryptonite ring and every gadget you could think of.
Well, this is another one that felt like an homage to Dark Knight Returns.
Absolutely.
Both in the, like, if I'm going to fight Superman, I have to have, like, all these things already lined up and know what I'm going to do. And I'm use the whole power of the city to shock him, and it's going to give me 8 seconds to do something else. And
Yeah. In a way, I like this version better. This is what BVS should have aspired to more than DKR, I think, because it's thorough and effective while being brief and allowing them to shift back to being on the same side.
But the motivation in this is way more understandable than, because that's what I complained about with Batman versus Superman of like,
Yeah.
if you're trying to get him to talk to you, you don't attack him and start fighting. This guy is mind controlled, so you have no choice but to defend yourself and try and fight him.
Yeah.
And I also had a moment too of when you combine Batman and Superman, or really Batman and like any other hero from DC when they're like universe heroes and space people, this is a different character than the Batman who lives in his city and does ninja stuff.
Yeah.
As soon as Superman showed up, I was like, well, he would just pop his head off in an instant or like kill him right away. But like,
If he wasn't in his right mind.
or if his goal was like, I need to protect Ivy and I'm going to fight Batman who's trying to hurt her.
But
He would
that's
just
where we
kill
get
him.
this famous line that deep down, Clark's essentially a good person.
Yeah.
And deep down, I'm not.
Well, even before that, he says, Clark could squish me into the cement. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you've addressed my immediate thought
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a way that like is believable. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. You have to have a character acknowledge your question about the writing, or it's not like,
Yeah.
or you're going to think that they just didn't think about it.
Yeah, he's not just fast, he thinks fast. He would just kill him instantly.
On that note, he tells Clark to look up where Catwoman more or less pushes Lois off the skyscraper, the Daily Planet, to her death. Of course, he breaks free. That's enough to just instinctually make him bolt and save her.
Which is another good Superman characterization, because it's not just that he's the strongest and the fastest, is that he's just sheer willpower and determination. Where like even if he wasn't ultra strong, he would never quit.
He just can't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
He can't allow people to get hurt on his
Batman
watch.
would kill people if he was under.
That part seemed
Yeah.
a
Mind
little
control.
funny to me because it made it seem like rescuing her instantly snapped him out of it. He didn't.
Yeah,
he
after
didn't, he
that,
didn't
it's
return
awful.
back to it afterwards.
No.
So like he didn't. So he did. Yeah. So that took him.
That was
100%
his.
out of
Why'd
it.
you say that name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 100% out of it. He doesn't return now that he's like completed his like 2-second task.
The poison is not still in his
Yeah,
system.
it's not. It just instantly disappeared. That seems kind of funny to me.
Well, I don't think so, because they talk at one point about, I can't remember which character who was also controlled by Ivy mentions that like you're aware. It might have been Superman later actually going, you're aware. It's sort of like an out of body experience. Like you're
Yeah,
not in
yeah.
control, but you're aware of
What you're
what's
doing.
happening and
Yeah.
what you're doing. And so I think if you are able to make that leap then from awareness to control, at that point, it's like, okay, well, you don't have a hold anymore.
Which he can do, because that's what the other thing that makes Superman special. Again, not just the power, but he's sheer willpower and determination, and he never gives up, and he's just pure of heart.
Yeah, if you did that to Selena, not going to work.
Yeah. And I also gave it a pass because they lampshaded this a few scenes later when they described like, oh yeah, well, you got like synthetic kryptonite and you mixed it in there. So maybe it's like
Yeah.
a weird version.
It's
and
not as potent.
it doesn't work the way it does on humans.
This scene gave me a little Dumb and Dumber what if he shot you in the face kind of feeling.
It's a chance we're willing to take.
You could have gotten Lois killed.
Or a risk we're
What
willing
if
to
he
take.
shot you in the face?
So this next part is both awesome and kind of dumb. Maybe the goofiest part of the whole thing.
Crypto
Bruce,
shows?
where Batman and Superman look at each other and they're like, I know just the person who can find her, right? And they show up. Batman shows up at Ivy's. She turns around. Superman's the other way. She runs to the other door, which, why would you run from Superman, first of all? And then that door opens, and it's Crypto, the dog, growling at her.
Icicle, the villain.
Yeah. And I'm like,
Greatest.
God damn it. That was the way they found her. That's too much of a cop-out. For one, it's like when you talk about, well, yeah, he solved the mystery, but we didn't see how he did it. Show the work, you know. What redeems the scene is that she sees the dog, she turns around like, are you fucking... And Selena just knocks her out.
Crypto felt to me like when we talk about the artist going like, well, this is my chance. I've always wanted to draw Crypto. I have to
Yeah.
work him into the story somehow.
Finally.
And also going like, okay, I was contractually obligated to work Superman and Metropolis and Lois into the story. Now I want to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
So the dog saved the day. That's
Well,
fine.
I like also just the contrast in the characters too, where she knocks out Ivy and then Superman goes, was that really necessary? And Batman and Catwoman in unison, they share a speech bubble and say, yes.
Yeah, we're about beating prisoners.
She had that coming. Well, really, I mean, if you don't knock out Poison Ivy, it's like my complaint when I was halfway through the Arkham game the other day, and I was like, wait, he just gave Poison Ivy a talking to and said, please go back to your cell.
Get along now.
And I was like, that's going to be a problem for me later. Thanks, guys. And sure enough, it was. But
Yeah.
like, you can't leave anything to chance with someone that powerful.
And you'd think that Superman would understand that not everybody can subdue people in the way that he
Instantly,
can.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not everybody can just like hold someone's wrists. They're immobilized.
All right. Issue number 613 opens with Bruce and Selena and Thomas Elliott and Leslie Tompkins attending an opera benefit for Leslie's practice. The opera begins and the costume comes off and it's Harley Quinn on stage, which I want to just acknowledge that sometimes Harley is my least favorite Jim Lee character, and yet the classic Jester suit looks fantastic. I really like how he does this. So she surprises the audience. People who are disguised as orchestra members down there in the pit, they put on their masks. They're part of the highest everyone. Guns come out, right?
So
And
nobody in the orchestra was like,
Who are you?
Who are you?
yeah.
You filling in?
You're
yeah,
holding that
yeah.
wrong.
Who's this other
You're
sex
holding that
man?
wrong.
Yeah.
Like, the brass is over there, buddy.
We don't have a tambourine player. What the hell?
Anyway, so they're descending on the crowd. Thomas Elliott is like, fuck that, I'm calling the police or whatever. And she ninja flip cartwheels up to the balcony.
This was one where I was like, that wouldn't happen.
a stretch.
And then I saw she's wearing moon shoes.
Yeah, she has springs on
Yeah,
her
I'm
boots.
okay with this. then.
Nice.
Yeah.
I immediately thought of the Nickelodeon or whatever. You see it advertised on TV where they're like,
Yeah.
they were little trampolines for your feet.
Oh, yeah.
Moon boots, baby.
So she snatches this family heirloom from Thomas. We see that it was like a jade pendant or something or
Yeah.
emerald or something. That
And I
was
work in a
from
jewelry
his
store.
mother's.
I've disassembled hundreds of those.
Oh, really?
They're tchotchkes. I mean, theirs is probably expensive and fancy, but like you get
They're
them
not
on
as
your
rich
trip.
as the
But who can
Waynes.
tell
Yeah.
the difference?
I could.
Yeah.
So Harley steals that. Batman and Catwoman fight her off, and she actually shoots Catwoman. Harley shoots Selena. Batman swoops in to save her, and she's like, if you ever fucking swoop in to try to rescue me instead of going after the person that we're trying to catch, I'll fucking scratch your eyes out, you know? I was like, yes, that is what she would say. Not, oh, thank you. My big,
My
strong
hero."
man. Yeah. Thomas chases
Don't
Harley
touch me. That's the answer you get.
into the back alley. And as Batman gets out there, he just starts saying, no, no. And flip perspective, we see Thomas Elliott shot to death and Joker standing over him with, it's worth mentioning, the bang flag coming out of his gun.
If you were observant, you would connect those. I didn't.
That's the end of the
I knew
issue.
what happened, so maybe that was part of it, but I didn't connect that. I want to step back just a little bit. There's a few things in that scene. One we haven't really talked about yet, the mixed styles, like in flashbacks, of going to like a watercolor and a painting look.
Yes, and sometimes that's effective. Good example is Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, where they have a permanent cast of multiple artists that feature past, present, and various perspectives, right? So anytime it does that,
It's this artist.
it's that version, right? That shit works great. I think we saw it well. It would switch off with the Batwoman flashbacks and stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen that
That's
stuff
what
well done.
The childhood flashbacks remind me of that.
But that's going to be one of my cons for this issue. They do not measure up at all to me.
I liked it in this scene, though, because I like the mixing the shot composition. And there's even one where, like, the big puffballs on Harley's outfit, like, sort of blend into the pearls on Bruce's mother's
That is
necklace.
very cool.
And just that overall scene is a neat.
Nothing about the
construction.
composition, like the way the pages are laid out, great. I have no qualms about that. It's just I fail to recognize Jim's style, and it seems like he's trying something that's sort of out of his wheelhouse a little bit. Like for something that's we talked about so often over-rendered and hyper-detailed, for him to then go less detailed and, I don't know, leave Alex to do the rest or something. I don't know who's doing what in those pages. I can't even tell. And so it's like, well, if you were afraid of trying to do the Tim Sale style and went opposite of that, maybe this is what you were nervous about. I don't know.
I liked it. I thought it was effective because it put the whole childhood memories in like a kind of washy, undefined,
Yes.
like memories would be. Like you don't really, there's not a lot of details. It's more the big picture stuff.
Yes. Which I'm all for stylistically that kind of contrast in what they're doing. It's hard to judge an older title through modern eyes because even though this isn't that old, a lot of books coming out now are doing this kind of thing better, and so that's more fresh in my mind.
Sure.
I think that this is all Jim. It's either all Jim and he's using colored inks, like watercolors,
Yeah.
or he's doing like a black ink wash and then the colors are being applied to some of it. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just Jim probably penciling stuff and then doing colored inks on top of it.
Honestly, until you guys started talking about it, I didn't even connect that Jim also did those. I thought that was somebody else. But now
Yeah,
looking at
because
like
nobody
the
else
faces,
credited.
I can
so
see
I was
the
like,
face.
I was like,
Yeah.
who's
He
doing
has
what
to
here?
alter his style because, like, if he was to do all of his little tiny lines, how would he do them? Because
Yeah.
it can't be the ink, because then the ink would be too prominent. So either it would have to be pencil, and then that would be kind of a weird contrast because you'd be like watercolors plus pencil lines,
Yeah.
or you'd have to try to do that with a brush, but you can't make the lines wouldn't be quite as crisp and stuff.
It's like splotchy.
Or maybe that's also kind of the whole present day is happening currently and there's no memory involved and it's very detailed because I'm living it right now versus all of that stuff being kind of dreamy because it's
Yeah,
That's
and I like Ben's characterization of that it's intentionally sort of washed out and
yeah.
less tangible, I guess.
Yeah.
The other things I wanted to point out in that scene, so he's like, oh man, I just had a really bad head injury a few days ago and I've been wearing a Kevlar cowl and I just didn't wear it tonight because I
decided
thought, whatever.
not.
But also, when I think of Kevlar, and I don't know anything about this stuff, so you can correct me if I'm wrong or someone can, I think of like it prevents penetration. But
I'm listening.
But a giant, super heavy,
Big fucking bag of sand.
yeah.
cracking you in the head, I don't feel like it would do much
No,
to negate that at all.
I don't think so.
Well, and even like bulletproof vests are bulletproof, not knife proof. They act in a different way. Like a bullet is made to like travel fast, impact quickly, and then it intentionally
Flattens.
squishes. Yeah, to make like a bigger hole. And so it's almost like the contrast between the two like materials that makes it effective. But a knife could still slip in there. It cuts it different.
Or a train slamming into it. It's still the force of that will
Totally.
still transfer into the object.
So that is to say, I think that you're right. It doesn't change impact.
Should do well against cats.
Yeah.
But also to reinforce how fucked up he is in the story, which I didn't remember that he's
still very bullheaded.
Yeah, he's like out of this from the beginning.
I don't think that I need that.
Yeah.
It's almost a flaw of the story of how badly he's fucked up in the beginning versus how quickly he's just back on the scene. Like when they put him fully suited up in Croc's cell, I was like, when is this?
Yeah.
How much time has passed?
They say they make a mention of 6 days later, but it's just after that scene.
That's
so he's
wild, man.
I don't want to say it's not like Long Halloween, but it's like one of those stories where they do that where it's to sell why he's maybe not as awesome as he would be normally. Although it kind of doesn't seem like that. He seems about as awesome as he ever is.
He just fought Superman after that.
Yeah. So that doesn't make sense.
Oh, by the way, there's a tail end of that scene after the Superman fight where they're cool with each other again, right? And they're kind of talking through, and Superman says, well, I'm glad that I gave you that ring.
Yeah.
Because I knew I could trust you. And you're like, oh, shit. I thought this was some, like, sinister Batman shit, like, I'm always ready for anyone, whatever. No, it was Superman going, hey, if anybody ever gets in my head, I need someone I can count on to stop me.
Yeah, that's a really nice touch. Because then it ends with what are friends for?
Exactly. And it shows
Aristotle.
the fuck.
Shout out to my boy.
It shows the trust between them, even in a situation like that where it's the least likely reason that he would have had that. All right, so massive cliffhanger with the Joker, right? He's standing over Thomas Elliott's body. We start the next issue, 614, with a brief recap of Joker's history with flashbacks to the Killing Joke, No Man's Land, killing Sarah Essen, A Death in the Family.
And those flashbacks look rad. Not what's being depicted, but just how it's being depicted.
It's very interesting because those are done differently. They're giving a red wash over the whole thing, and they're drawn more similarly.
It feels very sinister.
Yeah. This whole thing is great. And then a most recent flashback to him killing Thomas Elliott there, or Tommy as he's now referred.
We call him T.E.
I love this part where he's punching Joker, and it's going back and forth between his internal and Joker talking.
That cover of it is great, too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the cover is crazy. Batman, I cannot, Joker, stop. I will not stop. As he's punching him. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And he's going, stop, 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 over and over. And you think he's just saying, like, stop punching me. And then he finally lets up for a second, and Joker goes, stop me if you've heard this one.
Yeah, which is
it's telling a joke. I just
man.
love how they go together because if you didn't have the benefit of seeing what Batman is thinking, then it would just be the punching and the joke and the joke. Yeah, stop.
Well, in the
stop,
animated
T-Fly.
version, that's what it is. And so I don't think I even read into it the way you did, that he's also kind of finishing his sentences in his head.
It's a pacing thing.
Stop.
Yeah.
Won't stop.
Yeah.
Can't stop, won't stop. So before that, he's thinking back to all those things with Jason Todd and Sarah Essen and all these things, Barbara Gordon. Batman decides that this history is justification to finally kill Joker. He's caught up in the emotion. He's like, I'm ending the cycle right fucking now. Harley tries to fight him off, gets kicked out of the frame really quickly. Selina intervenes, and this is fucking nuts. This shows how affected Batman is. Yeah, that painting of Barbara is great.
That painting of Barbara is amazing. It gave me both like Daphne and Velma combined into one character. But the colors that's what a fantastic.
Why can't the other ones be like that?
Yeah, the other stuff seems like a memory. That seems like a dream.
That's like an idealized, remembering like
she's
the
glowing.
best memory of forever.
Well, it's like where she would be today, I think is what he's seeing. Like she should be suited up with me right now.
Like in V for Vendetta, where she's reading the note that's the other prisoner's story, and she's telling about like meeting this other girl on set, but it's like the laundry lines and it's totally summer glowy, and you get like a centered face turnaround. It feels like that.
Definitely.
That's what I wanted to be in Killing Joke that I never got of like, remember, she's Batgirl.
Yeah.
She's important too. She's significant.
So this part is fucking crazy. He takes Harley down really quickly. Selina, who has just been shot, comes up, whips him, right? He whips his hand back as he's about to punch him again or something like that, and is basically like, dude, you'll fucking regret this, don't do it. And without hesitation, he punches her fucking bullet wound. Again, this guy just stopped the mission to save her after getting shot, right? And this is how much of a 180, this is how much has changed in that 2-minute period, that now she's back and he's going to take advantage of that vulnerability in a fight. I mean, wow.
I also really like both the connecting it in the story, because so he's walking through in his memory all the things Joker has done.
Yeah.
And so now we're at the part where he's thinking about Jason Todd and thinking about, like, you know, Dick had skills. Dick was an acrobat and a gymnast. He could do
He
that.
said dickhead skills, and I was really confused.
Yeah, man.
Go
Yeah.
on. Dick had
Dick
skills.
had skills, and he was a gymnast and an acrobat. And he says Jason only had rage. And in this scene, Batman is succumbing to his rage and just like completely giving it.
And guilt.
And guilt, yeah, and attacking Catwoman to stop her from stopping him. But then also the foreshadowing and the tying that in of what we're going to see in the story just shortly. Like, this is a really, really nice set piece and introduction to what comes next.
Yeah. As Catwoman's talking to him, she says, look, if the roles were reversed, it's kind of like Superman with the ring. If the roles were reversed, you know you would do anything in your power to stop me from doing something like that I'd regret. Right?
And he just sticks his finger in her bullet
Which is
wound.
so true. Yeah, and he just fucking, ooh. And finally, he's beating on Joker, and he's thinking about, I could kill him this way. I could crush his windpipe. I could crush his skull. I could do this, right? And Gordon shows up out of nowhere, actually fires on him, grazes him twice, once on the arm, and shoots off one of his little ears on his cowl, which is like fucking Oroku Saki in the flashback, Ninja Turtles. He raised his katana and severed my ear. Gordon promises the third shot won't miss, right? He appeals to Batman's moral code, saying, if I wouldn't do it after he shot my daughter, killed my wife, why would I let you do it now? Everyone's appealing to his sanity here, and he's just not hearing it.
Well, in this shot of Batman with the bloody hands completely silhouetted, that's amazing. That
in
would be
between
like
Gordon, yeah.
the
And can I just say, I had raved about Tim Sale's Gordon before, and Jim Lee's Gordon is just fantastic.
Yeah.
I love his look. He's not in the story a lot, but man.
just the perfect age, the perfect amount of grizzle.
Oh, yeah, this is like a retired Gordon, too.
He's not a police officer for some reason
Yeah.
at this point. I don't remember. But Batman's line here, I really like, as Gordon is saying all that, like, he did this to me and that to me, and I wouldn't do it. Why would I let you do it? And his Batman's answer of just, how many more lives are we going to let him ruin? Like what everyone
and Gordon's
says.
saying, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because
I'm not going to let him
you
ruin
become
yours.
him if you do this, and I will stop you.
Yeah, essentially, like, if you do that, then you're the same to...
What's the difference?
He said, and I'll lead the fucking chase
You can
to
kick
stop you.
as many people in the spine as you want. Do not kill the Joker. Crosses the line. But just that bloodied shot with the silhouette, I think that's amazing. That would be a great neck tattoo or whatever. It just looks...
Ben Affleck back tattoo.
It reminds me of Midnighter in The Authority, because Midnighter is a Batman analog, and he's constantly covered in blood. It just really looks like that.
Meanwhile, Joker, stop, if you heard this one before. But what we didn't get to is, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. Which is kind of a funny thing to say, because, of course, every criminal who gets caught, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, right? As he's fucking crushing his fucking face. Because it's the Joker, of course he did it, right? We see Hush looking down from the rooftop again, observing Batman and Gordon. You see Joker and Thomas Elliot on the ground. I think, to a certain extent, as you're reading this, Evan, you'd be the perfect person to tell me, because this is fresh to you. As you're reading this, you have a mysterious villain character who we know very little about, seems to know a lot about Batman. And the whole rest of the story is this brand new character from his past. Mm-hmm. Are you immediately suspecting that this guy is the dude?
Who do you think it is at this point?
I still thought it was Tommy.
Prior to Tommy dying, you thought it was him the whole time, right?
It was just visually. And they could have not steered me in this direction had they not made him look
Like a
sinister.
It's
bodybuilder.
the Lincoln March thing.
Well, yeah, they
fucking
made
draw
him
like-
look sinister at points. Like, and you could have just not done that because they don't have interactions or anything that
I mean, they have fights as children.
it's not a stretch to think that you conjured this character specifically for this story, and they might have a larger role than just being a surgeon person.
Yeah. Why are you showing him so much?
Why is he still around?
Yeah. So
Why was he in Metropolis? They never answered that. But anyway.
Was the opera in Gotham?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't know about
I know I'm right. Like always.
Yeah, I
wait.
still.
They had to. No, they flew him from Philly. I was like, maybe he's from. Nope, he's not.
Yeah, I still thought it was him. Even when his body's there, I'm like,
I intentionally looked at
I don't know.
there's the rooftop shot of Hush observing, and I was like, okay, is his body still on the? Yep, his body's still on the ground. All right, nice work.
And then Hush has another Aristotle quote. He's like, "More money, more problems."
does Arkham just employ dentists to do like dental repair work?
They got so many veneers in there.
Yeah, just
Yeah. Or facial reconstruction. I
Yeah,
mean, to
yeah,
get punched in the face by a guy who's really good at it repeatedly.
in Sleepy Hollow. Have you guys seen that movie before?
No,
It's
only
in
the
high
cartoon.
school.
What?
I saw it in high school.
Ugh, it's funny actually. Ichabod is like actually bringing science to the table where everybody else is just like, scene of the crime.
I think he did it.
You're the guilty party. Yeah, or whatever. And so they find a body in the river. It gets taken to the jail. Ichabod is like trying to get a closer look. And the jailer person is like, when you find him in the river, cause of death is drowning. And Ichabod's like, maybe, but also maybe not. Maybe I could figure out that he
like
was.
if this guy was shot in the face.
Yeah,
that doesn't hold up.
He was chopped into pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, like, well, maybe if I take a closer look at him, I could find something else out. And then as they're having this back and forth, and the dude's like, no. Then a couple cops, arm in arm, bringing this dude whose face is just so messed up. And the jailer guy's like, what happened to him? We caught him jaywalking. and they just like kick him in this pit cell and like call it good.
Sleep it off.
Yeah, all right. Yeah,
Hamburger
dudes would just
face.
be dudes would just be showing up all the time, just getting their ass kicked. And
So the last thing I'll mention
Job
of this
security.
scene back in the present, Hush is looking down on all this that just happened, and he says to himself, he is innocent, referring to the Joker, and he flips a scarred coin to Beacon Tuver.
there was parts of this where I was like,
What?
yeah, kind of like what, and also just kind of like, I don't like this. It seems different to me when something super dope happens and I'm like totally along for the ride and that was clever and not everything is like a cool, complex detective story just because you include a lot of really weird stuff in it. And that's how this stuff made me feel. Like he flips the coin and I'm like, Two-Face?
Why?
What? No, yeah, like why? And not in a like, oh, cool way. Just in a like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? I don't.
This is another one that makes me think of like if you were reading it month to month. If you had to wait a month or 2 weeks, and like so you ended with that.
Yeah.
Was that exciting in a way that it's not when you're consuming it all at once and you kind of know already? Also.
Yeah, I thought about that after the fact too. That it was 12 issues. It would have taken a year because they were on schedule. And maybe if I was reading it at the time, it would have been more impactful to me or something. But also it just seemed, rather than being like a convoluted but awesome, like Usual Suspects
It's
or
kind of
something.
a natural progression from one
you're
element
like,
to the next.
oh man, this is full of like twists and turns and I totally along for the ride and I really got bamboozled. It just felt like Long Halloween and stuff, like just finding reasons to include characters for like cameos. Like, I don't really
This
care for
chunk, the Joker section, is when I had the biggest like, oh, this is like the Long Halloween of like, you're going to bring back this guy for this scene and this guy for this scene. And I did like it with the Joker because it was a scene where you introduce the Joker, you remind everyone why he's a threat, why he's a big bad, why he's important, and yet he's not fundamental to the story.
Well, and it's also interesting just because how rare is it that he catches the Joker and he doesn't deserve what's coming to him this time?
And apparently it's really easy when it's not his story. You just punch him a bunch and then there you got him. Is it?
This is definitely the part where it starts to become familiar. And you're like, oh, okay. I see what you're doing. You're like, this is the same guy for sure.
It's this guy. No.
Yeah,
It's this guy.
No, I mean the same writer is what I mean.
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
Like, okay, this is Jeff Loeb's thing at this point, but it's not in the way that. Whereas I had said Dark Victory is a better story, but because we read them back to back and they were so similar, I enjoyed it less because it's doing
The same.
stuff. It's the same format, really. Whereas this isn't, and every character is very well used. But once they start adding up, you're like, oh, okay. And then you start thinking about it in terms of that, right?
I don't think I love the format of just filling my head with data and then trying to explain it at the very end in a way that still doesn't quite land to me by the time I arrive there.
What it is, in my opinion, is
Don't
we've
tell
set
me
up
what it is, Sammy J.
his intent, as far as I can tell, is that you've set up a mystery. And at a certain point, there is a most plausible candidate, right? So
It's a dream. It's all a dream.
halfway through, we have to start deflecting as much as possible, right? Okay, this is what I was going to not say, but again, hard spoiler show. This is an old title, but this is the Alberto Falcone on the boat moment of this book, where you take the
Of
guy
the book, not the movie.
who's gotta be the guy, right?
That's the nipple shooter.
And then and you kill him. And we're in the midway, maybe 2/3 of the way through, and you kill that guy. And that's the same technique exactly that was used in that book.
Well, and when we get to the end of this, they do a good job of rationalizing all these elements using Batman, like standard Batman stuff. Like, okay, I believe that in this universe. But it still feels a little bit like one of those mysteries that you, the reader, couldn't solve. Like, I like a mystery where if you are savvy and paying attention, you can deduce it yourself as you're going along. And maybe there are misdirects and things like that. But like this, you just saw him get
Dead.
shot in the heart and he's dead lying there. And he's like, I'm Two-Face. Like, that's the end of that scene.
Yeah.
Like, I got the coin. I'm Two-Face.
Yeah.
It's a little too much of that I don't like. Of like, you could have never really figured this out,
Like when
in an unfair way.
when a mystery or whatever movie has this like playback unraveling montage at the end of it, like quickly show all the behind the scenes events
Like
that you
the
didn't
perspectives
see.
you didn't
yeah,
see.
like
Yeah.
the guy behind the wall, but some of these
Calendar man behind the wall.
yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, that old classic.
classic.
Such a big payoff.
This kind of story makes me think that no such visual montage would even still make it make sense to me.
All right, so the next issue is 615. Bruce gives the eulogy at Thomas Eliot's funeral. Afterward, he returns to the cave and obsessively pores over the autopsy scans. Says he's been awake for 2.5 days. Nightwing was like, hey, I've been talking to you for 20 minutes. Are you going to pay attention? And he encourages Batman to pursue this thing with Selina and to actually let her in. Be like, you know what? Just fucking tell her. You know her as Bruce.
That booty dog?
You know,
Come on.
You know her as Batman. I think she would get it. Let her in. I think this is good for you. And this continues on their drive in the Batmobile. And Batman says, you know what? Maybe you're right. And you see the bit of excitement from the, like, you know, parent-kid dynamic that they still have a little bit. And Nightwing goes, really? He says, it is none of your business.
Yeah.
And it's like Batman in his head has completely tuned out after that line. He's like, "You fucking right, it's none of, I'm going to
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
Stop talking."
But the funny thing is, there are people who tell him shit he doesn't want to hear in this book, and then he almost immediately does it.
Yeah,
You know,
he talks back, but then he does it.
Yeah, which I definitely relate to, because it's like, I didn't ask for feedback right now. Why are you giving it to me? And then you ruminate on that overnight, and you're like, fuck, that's actually a good idea.
I'm not going to tell them
I
that.
intentionally forget that somebody else suggested it so that I can pat my own back.
You're the boss.
and claim that I came up with it.
Very
Has a
thoughtful.
meeting with big news that you thought of, which was somebody else's thing from yesterday's meeting.
Damn.
There's a line at the funeral that I like, though. It's a weird line, but I seem to have more family than I seem to have.
Yeah,
Which is
I read that
clunky.
line twice because at first I didn't like it, and then I'm like, oh, I do like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always looking for misspellings and stuff. And so some of those lines like that does this need an apostrophe or am I being stupid? Okay, no, it's right. It just seems weird.
I like it. It's like Memento. Like, I can't remember to forget you. You know, it's
Yeah.
like one of those kind of things.
What? Okay. This opener on the funeral, it's got this cool overhead, and the box that says Chapter 8, The Dead, is tilted to match the angle.
Yeah.
And I think that is very cool. I like that little stuff.
I just want to say that these picturesque movie-style funerals are like a thing of the past. They're still in every show, every book when there's a funeral. It's this big outdoor production, and there's fucking seating, and there's pallbearers, and there's a big easel with the thing. I've known a lot of dead people. I've never been to one of these.
That's a sentence.
I've been to churches. Most people just they bring you home in your little jug and they sent you on the mantle, and that's the fucking end. And I think this should come back.
These are rich people, also really rich people.
You're right. You're
Where
right.
we go to you do that, and then you go to the pizza parlor after.
Papa's.
Man, you remember them? I do remember them. Yeah.
You're right.
Imagine having enough friends to even attend your funeral.
I mean, that's pretty rad. I don't know. I just think that they should throw you a party when you go. That's all I'm saying. You know,
A party is a better way to do it in general.
it shouldn't be a guy reads the same script that he read about the last guy who died two hours before you got here today. You know, like
Death, man.
Yeah,
You know
come
what I'm
on,
saying?
come on.
We've all been there. When you guys passed, would you prefer to be buried somewhere, or would you like to be cremated? Or
You're going to be gone way before me. Don't worry about it, man.
No, I'm just curious. I feel like it.
Yeah, because he's the one who lives healthy now, so he's going to be the first to go. That's yeah.
I've been eating a lot of bad food and drinking a lot of alcohol. Preservatives is what I've heard both of those have.
Formaldehyde.
I have been
Turning myself
sitting
into a
on the
mummy.
couch for years.
Yeah, you're running on I don't think that's unhealthy. You're running on low power mode, so you should get twice the longevity.
Yeah, correct.
It makes sense.
And Sam, all your blood clots are going to prevent the stroke from happening because they'll all get in the way.
They'll all converge into
Yeah.
one, and it'll be like a superpower.
So answer my question.
I don't want to be burned up. I told her I don't like that idea, but I'm fucking dead, so, do whatever you want. What I do want is to throw a show with everybody I know at the Wow Hall. Fucking do that. Because when Dustin from 800 Octane died, Dustin Wheeler, fantastic drummer, R.I.P., they threw a show, and it was fucking amazing. Every band who's friends with him went up on stage and they played a song, and they had his drum kit on display, and I was like, man, this is the greatest fucking send-off. I was like, I want that, That fucking rules. But yeah, I don't really want to get burned up and put in a fucking jar.
What if we're super old though?
I never thought
We're
I'd
gonna
live
have an old people
this long.
We're gonna have an old people show.
I don't know.
I don't care. I mean, cremation because it's easy. It's always nice when they're like, yeah, put me in the ground and into the earth. I think there's too many people for that to be
It's just
there's not
expensive
enough
too.
room. Yeah, very expensive. The celebration, I want everyone to go home by themselves and play video games for a day straight in the dark.
Yeah.
Close those windows,
Yeah,
friends.
I don't want you to
like
think
that.
of me. I want
Turn
you to
off your
think
phone.
like me.
All right, so Batman and Nightwing stop a Riddler heist as quickly as it starts. Now, this is where you could accuse them of being like, okay, we're throwing too much at supporting cast.
And
I
again,
think.
the long Halloween thing of
Exactly.
Riddler, what a dumb villain. He was created 90 years ago.
And he seems to be the first or only villain unaffected by Ivy in this whole plot for the most part. I mean, I guess you could say Joker and Harley.
But there's the implication that they're being manipulated by the villain,
Yes.
which is not what the
Versus
Yeah,
Riddler just seems to be isolated. Batman's like, this is his MO. I don't think this is connected. And then he puts on his Arkham Asylum detective vision lens and he sees ash from the Lazarus pit at the scene of the crime. And then the little map comes back up and it's like, new mission objective. And
I need to find the nearest Lazarus pit.
the final 3 pages is of 2 scenes played out side by side. And this is some of that beautiful storytelling I was talking about. Joker has a visitor in his cell. Meanwhile, Catwoman speaks to someone. Both have an off-screen other person that they're talking to. Hush is revealed to be with Joker in his cell. Batman revealed to be there with Catwoman. It ends as they both unmask themselves Batman obviously revealing Bruce Wayne to Selina. Hush revealing a Dark Knight Returns fully healed style Harvey Dent to Joker.
Not just like style, but like the trench coat. Everything looks exactly the same, which I like. I like the nod to that version of the character.
Fantastic ending. That fucking blew me away.
Yeah, I do really like...
Evan's like, I guess you're right.
No, I mean, I didn't like what was being shown to me, but I do love the simultaneous...
Can you elaborate? Like what?
Nope. I just
don't want him to undress. Okay, it's too much. It's not decent.
I still don't. Maybe I'm.
First episode, guys. Evan's already not having fun.
No, it's just this. That's how it always is.
It's a chore to get
We always
through.
do this. No, I just.
Let me interrupt you.
It always
for
sucks.
once.
It's always unpleasant.
That's fine. I like the way that they're presenting it. I like when you have these moments. Sometimes comic books just seem like comic books, and sometimes I really can't imagine them as movies. And I like this, seeing like their shots in a movie, and to really show that they're happening in real time simultaneously. It's bouncing back and forth, and so the panel. I really like that kind of stuff. I just don't really like
These shots of backs of heads.
No, I like a bald person. I just don't really like the whole. It's Two-Face. I don't like what they're trying to tell me about the villain right now, and I think it's dumb.
And it's a borderline exposition dump because it's just like, we're just going to be in this room, and I'm going to tell you, I'm this guy.
Yeah. Here's
But again,
this
it's
is
like
the story
done in the absolute coolest way. It's that Tarantino thing of like.
I like the side by side thing, but I can be on board with.
It's not the way that they're presenting it, and I like the right side. I like what's going on with.
That's what I was gonna say.
I like Batman and Catwoman.
The reason it's left as Joker and right is Catwoman is because the more important reveal and sort of the heart of the story is the final beat, and that is the Batman Catwoman embrace when he reveals his identity. Because
that would have made me sadder if it was the opposite.
That's the more important thing versus the villain. We already know this, so showing something we already know to a character who is not our main character, who has not been trying to figure this out, that's not as important, right? This is just a meeting where he's coming and was like, what the fuck do you want? Oh, I know you.
Yeah, it's two side guys talking about side guy stuff. It's
so that's not the thing. I think it's just cool that they thought, oh, you know what? We could play this out alongside Bruce's review.
We only have 4 pages left. How are we going to cram all this shit in 4 pages? Let's split screen.
Jim's like, I've got it.
Because I'm screenshotting stuff and I can't, so I'm frequently like, oh, we passed that point already. This is quick, but it's back to like the Riddler goon fight.
Rewind.
And sorry. And Nightwing's fighting goons and Batman's thinking about it. He says his parents, circus acrobats, had been murdered, and I wanted to make a difference in his life. The way my parents had lived, they would have made a difference in mine. You could edit this so that it sounds
the
like
words in the right spot.
Yeah, you can edit this so it sounds like I can read. The way if my parents had lived, they would have made a difference in mine. And I thought, your parents would not have done the same thing that you did. Like you
jump off this building, boy.
You turned this kid into like a weird teenage crime fighter. That's not what your parents would have done.
I'm going to give you these 2 sticks. You're going to beat people's heads with them.
No guns.
Yeah, you do think about things weirdly, sir.
I like that scene because it's a continuation of the sort of the unfair, maybe fair when you really look at who Batman is, but unfair way he's looking at himself, where he's talking about like Superman. He's like, well, I can count on Superman. He's a good guy and I'm a bad guy. In that same scene I wrote, he says, Dick isn't like me. He doesn't come from privilege. And not appreciating that the reason Dick is different than him is that he had Batman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other thing this scene kind of ignores is that Bruce had Alfred, who was that element in his life. But again, just the being unfair to himself. And like that is, again, setting aside the superhero comic booky thing of putting this child in extreme danger all the time of like, he was the positive element in his life that made him fun and plucky and not
gave him
darkly
something to
consumed.
aspire to and gave him purpose. But I think you're right about the Alfred thing, but people with depression and anxiety disorders and this kind of shit can often really hyper focus on yourself or your tragedy or whatever the thing is. And so he does have Alfred and he knows that he's indispensable and he wouldn't be where he is without him. But at the same time, his day-to-day feeling is, I am alone.
Yeah. And this story looks at that because they talk about it. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
not as alone, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to act
right.
like it, though.
And it's
Exactly.
very human to apply standards to you that you give grace to other people.
Sure.
Like in the exact same circumstance.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's cool that you, but I should be doing something different. Or like,
Yeah.
okay, we should be a little nicer to yourself, buddy.
Well, and even though this story doesn't touch on it, other stories have, and I feel like I can bring that characterization to it, of Alfred looking at it like, oh, if only I was a little more like a parent and less like a servant.
Well,
He
there
wouldn't
was
be
that
so much
dark
this way.
victory thing
Yeah.
where he looks at Dick coming home after his parents were killed, and he does what he should have done with Bruce when they do that. Again,
Yeah.
another side-by-side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to maybe save this for the end, but I think it is appropriate here. In the intro, very inappropriate. In the intro of Alfred telling us Batman's origin story, this solidified and also made me appreciate again that it's not the traumatic experience that made him exceptional. It's the traumatic experience that had him turn his exceptionalism into this weird fucked up life.
Yeah.
But the idea that
He could have been a genius something else.
genius anything, he was special anyway, and it's just these circumstances that have made him this way.
Yeah.
Which maybe is another fundamental difference between him and Dick Grayson. Even though Dick Grayson is also a genius detective and all that, he's not quite the same. Like, they talk about Batman in these things, he's like, he has photographic memory, and Oracle only has eidetic memory or something like, some like levels of being super geniuses.
Yeah. I'm going to go to 616, the next issue. The Batwing is tailing the LexCorp jet. Batman ejects himself against Oracle's wishes and makes her remote pilot the shit while he lands on the LexCorp jet. And we have established briefly earlier that Lex is president and Talia is CEO or president or whatever of LexCorp. He actually abducts Talia, which no easy feat, and stashes her with Selina. When he gets back to the cave, there's a sword through the back computer, and now he's got to go answer to Ra's as to why he took his daughter away. The page is again split here. We get Batman and Ra's fighting, and then we get Shiva and Catwoman fighting because she busts in to save Talia in this case.
This scene was funny to me too, if I can find it here, because it was a trend I noticed, because it's me. When you have any of the hot 90s art on there, it's always like all of it at once.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this splash is going to be all like the butts and the tits and the abs and that. And then it will never come back again for a while. I have to imagine that's intentional, of like that week or two. That's all he was working on. Like this.
Like, we're just going to indulge on this for a bit and then back to normal.
If people average like a page a day, then you just spent an entire week staring
Yeah.
at these
And then
butts
like,
you're creating.
and now we're out of the fan service.
Erase that. No.
It's not heavy metal.
The titty-
Like, we're going to step out of it for most of it,
Yeah.
but we are going to jump into that for a little while.
Talia saves Selina, which is kind of a reversal. She freed herself from being tied up and chooses not to escape. Ra's is stabbed by Batman, which is a little bit shocking. And then you remember, oh yeah, he can save himself. Ra's admits here that he suspects this mystery person, which the other characters have not identified. Hush, no one knows this word yet. Pretty far into the story, but just like, yeah, this fucking guy.
Two-Face, the
I
villain.
think he used up
Bandage
one of
Man.
my Lazarus pits, right?
What's Dark Man starring Liam Neeson?
It's interesting though.
So cool.
Like, Ra's has such an ego and such a penchant for their like chess game that they
The
play
ritual of
that he could have just been like, yo, you took my daughter and all, but like, I want this guy too, right? And oh, okay, that solves everything. Like, no, not only do I want you to come all the way to me, I want to have a sword fight.
I'm going to sit here in the
which I
desert.
will be stabbed.
I want you to cross the line and hurt me badly, and then I'll let you know what I want.
I really like the line he says to Batman when Batman just like starts attacking him immediately and doesn't wait for it to start.
Yeah, think like your enemy.
Yeah, and then he's like, wow, whoever has done this to you has really riled you up, and that's cool. That he immediately sees what's going on in this situation. Of like, oh, somebody did this to you, made you this way.
Yeah.
Neat.
And again, ties back to the flashbacks that we've had earlier of him starting to adapt more because he doesn't have time to fuck around. You know? Selena recovers immediately as Talia had promised. She's like, oh, I gave her some herbs and spices from my KFC recipe. And she'll be fine within hours, right? And observes while Batman is stitched up in the cave by Alfred. Alfred says privately, when Batman's across the room, how remarkable it is that Bruce trusted her with his identity, and he, like Nightwing, encourages her to, keep this going. I think it's good for him.
How come he's got so many back boo-boos, but not everywhere else boo-boos?
No front boo. His chest is like pristine. His face is pristine.
Yeah.
We talked about that, I think, at Three Jokers.
He's constantly whipping his back
maybe.
Like it's not a turtle shell, dude. Don't do
You're like, how's he get all these ladies went under his cover? I'm like, remember, it's just the zipper. That's all.
Yeah,
no one else
yeah.
could see the rest of his body.
I suppose you could argue that
No one takes him from the back.
or no, everyone takes him from the back. In a fight, at least, that's the only place anyone can
No,
take
I
him
meant
from.
in the bedroom.
Yeah, no, you can't see any of the body because there's too many scars. You know?
Eccentric billionaire and sexual repressed. I'm going to be fully clothed. You get naked.
He's got a glass wall up, It's like you're
He's
going to the
never
deuce.
knew.
All right, Batman 617, next issue. Batman searches beneath the Bat computer, thinking Ra's doesn't do anything by chance. There's got to be some other message here. Catwoman notices they're being watched in the cave. And we have this great confrontation between Catwoman and Robin going at it. Then Bruce takes off the cowl to show Tim, like, yo, we're playing a different game here. Calm the fuck down.
I already know who you are, man.
This isn't a reveal to me.
Yeah.
No, that Catwoman knows who he is. And so there, I just
You look at this so differently than I
Oh
do.
my God.
It's the three perspectives that really make the show work. So I love just the cat fight shit through this whole scene, even after the reveal. And Selena decides to I'm going to borrow this motorcycle. And he's like,
Listen, kid,
can.
don't touch me ever again.
Yeah. She's like, I don't care if daddy's watching, I'll fucking claw out your brains or whatever, She takes the motorcycle, leaves, but made a little bit more exciting by the end of it when Tim goes, so you think she bought it?
Well, again, because I remember the broad strokes of the story, but I don't remember all these little beats.
Same here.
This is like the third or fourth time where they've done this, which I really like, where I have some kind of internal thought of like, well, Tim Drake wouldn't be like that. Maybe the other ones would, but Tim Drake is not that character.
Yeah.
He doesn't act like that. He's like thoughtful. He's smarter than them. He just wouldn't be that way. And then so a few beats later to immediately address that in a interesting and creative way, I'm like, that's really cool. I like that. That's this character.
Reminded me of Damien, honestly, who didn't exist yet.
Yeah. Or Jason Todd would have been this, like,
so
angry.
the end of
petulant.
that scene really made it for me. Like, I really like the little things that happen in this story where, like, taking it at face value is pretty good and it's entertaining, but then they give you just the little extra that makes it like, oh, no, we had intended something else all along.
Well, and another one of those that's right in this exact moment is when they're having the argument and it's in front of Jason Todd's costume. And I mean, we've seen that a million times.
Oh, yeah,
It's
she
always there.
kicks Tim into the shrine with Jason's suit.
Well, and then seeing that in this scene just made me think about it again. I'm like, that him having that up there, it's not just like to honor him, and it's not just a reminder of his mistake. It is literally like a masochistic self-punishment.
And probably unintentional warning to the other Robins.
this
of
could
like,
happen.
Like, watch your ass.
But then so
This
having
isn't
that,
a game.
having that thought while reading it, and then only a little bit later, I think Robin mentions it to Catwoman or maybe somebody's like, why do you think he has that up there? It's like a constant self-punishment. I was like, this book has so many of those, like, subtly introduce an idea and then reinforce it later, which is just really, really nice. It's clearly intended in that way.
Yeah.
Makes you question if you ever actually think anything on your own.
I'm just
or
constantly manipulated.
if, or if we're just always being made to think things.
You maybe. Very original.
Yeah, anyway.
I'm like Natalie Portman in Garden State. I'm like, blah, blah. Nobody ever made that sound before. I'm unique.
George Carlin, hey, I know things you never hear. Nobody has ever said these words in this particular order.
As soon as I put this hot poker in my ass, I'm going to chop my dick off.
No one has ever said that before right now. So they follow the motorcycle Catwoman took. She's fighting with Huntress. This fight scene, we talked about the evolution in art as this occurs over the span of, 11 or 12 months. The fight scene with Huntress is the closest we've seen so far to the all-star Batman and Robin action scenes that are just gorgeous. We get little bits of the blurs and out of focus stuff as they're trying to pull foreground, background. This huge splash page is just gorgeous to look at. Anyway, we've seen a lot of fight scenes here, like the stuff with Roz looked really great. We talked about the stuff with Shiva, how that looked almost like a throwback or something. But then this is next level to me. The fucking red lightning in the background, and I love the coloring. I love the composition.
I like the introduction of the red background because especially as it seems to intensify when we go to the next scene, because that's the only other visual thing that is burned into my memory is the depiction of that design of adult Jason Todd Robin.
The red and the red.
Yeah. That just is completely stuck in there.
And I'd be curious to see if anybody else was doing it at the same time or if this is just something that they came up with, but they totally do the whole red sky, red lightning bolt thing again in All-Star.
Yeah. So Batman and Robin arrive. Batman's like, yo, you keep a lookout. He's like, for who? And as Batman jumps off, Hush just appears behind him and says, for me.
No.
Scarecrow appears and
this is what I like right here.
Immediately apprehended. And I don't think it was bad that they wanted to touch on him being, someone who's okay, his expertise could have been used for the psychological profiles of establishing these characters' motivations, how they can be manipulated, so on and so forth.
Or who do we bring back next to really fuck with Batman?
Yeah, but I don't really think he's necessary. He was just in and out.
Well, as I'm flipping through these
Fast as
pages
Riddler.
quickly to jog my memory, he's just sort of there.
And then he's not. I do really like his design, which is very first season animated series, but cooler.
It looks cool.
Hush shows himself to Batman. He's holding. Okay. I didn't know how to say Hush.
So many
Hush
reveals.
Yeah, that's not better.
Yeah.
Hush appears.
Gives him all he's got.
with Robin as a hostage. Okay, he's in front of Batman.
A lot of trench coats in this book.
And
1 star.
He says, "You still haven't figured it out." Batman realizes he was being led to this specific cemetery. This is where Jason Todd had been buried after they moved him. Sure enough, Hush unmasks, and now it is grown-ass Jason. And already at this point, because I had forgotten a lot of this, and what I have experienced in the last couple of years is the animated film, which is much different. I was like, I feel like there's a lot that maybe influenced Under the Red Hood. There's a lot of this stuff going on. When he showed up, I was like, weird. He even looks like the basis for the design with the red domino mask and the trench coat and, because it's the same color as his bomber jacket. And I'm like, fuck, that's so weird that they would do that just a few years after this. And yet that was the enduring thing.
When it gets retconned, I feel like I don't quite remember because it all blends to me, but they don't talk about it in the movie, but in the comics, Under the Red Hood storyline, they talk about how he's already back at this point. Oh. And that's where they got the look from or something. There's some kind of weird retconning. Okay. No, I mean, he was around here and that's where they modeled Clayface. There's something weird like that.
Weird.
He saw Clayface as him and was like, dang, that looks pretty tight.
That's my look.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that is. I like his.
It's like seeing a picture of you that you've never seen before.
Yeah, whoa. I like his Sweeney Todd guts hair.
Yeah.
It's got a little rogue white streak.
Jason Blood, the demon guy.
I do like that, actually. All right, so 618.
I don't like this.
2 issues left. This is the one I got signed on the wall with the fucking Jason Todd Robin skull. I love it. Catwoman saves Robin from Hush, while Batman and
Typical woke Hollywood. The woman's got to come in and
Batman and Jason fight. And here's where Batman's connecting the dots from earlier, like we talked about. It must have been a batarang that cut my line, causing me to fall in Crime Alley. I was there specific,
that cut my bat rope.
Right? Jason was first introduced in Crime Alley, where he stole the Batmobile's front tire. Oh shit, that's the same tire that was blown off when I was fucking chasing Croc. And then this Jason seems to know a lot of the details, but he's also not using the name Bruce. He keeps saying Batman. It's like, how do you know all this shit, but why is he talking to me like that? And at the time that he figures it out, Jason becomes Clayface, like melting away in the rain and just dissolved. So there's not like a Clayface fight or anything. They were just using him for the shape-shifting, and now he's gone.
Clayface is a character in Batman continuity they've leaned on a lot. He's like the Danger Room, and he's whoever you want him to be, and he's a monster, and he's like a genius guy, and
he's the White Knight, Mad Hatter, fucking
mind control
amplifier.
Thing.
Like, he ends up being like
honestly, I love Clayface, and I fucking don't like when they use him like this. They always do shit like this, like you said, and
which again is kind of the long Halloween thing of like, these people could have entire stories written about them where they're the culmination of it, and now they're just like random guy number 3 who gets his ass kicked.
And you never catch him or do anything with him really either. He just wasn't the guy you were looking for. Oh shit, So Batman concludes that Clayface had aged up Jason, because if they tried to emulate the kid, they wouldn't have known exactly how he moved or how he talked and
or what his voice sounded like.
Exactly. And so, like, with years removed, Batman wouldn't know either. And so they modeled him more after Nightwing, which makes sense. Huntress slips away, which I don't know how you start a motorcycle undetected, but she gets away. And Robin takes the clay-stained costume back to the cave for analysis. I have to mention this, too. Clayface doesn't wear clothes. He transforms into entire costumes.
Yeah.
Why? Why are there clothes?
He is clothes.
So there's a couple things right there. And then Catwoman has a great moment here where she is not taking orders. She is not a Robin. She does not want to be talked to like a subordinate.
I'm not your toy wonder, you fucking moron.
Yeah, and we start to see some cracks in the armor. Like, imagine forming a relationship amid all this horrible shit going on. Maybe not the best foundation.
I don't know that I have enough stuff on my plate right now.
Yeah.
It happens multiple times in this book, and I think it's just a comic book thing sometimes for dramatic panels. But this is actually the best version of it in the whole thing. Faux Jason is punching Batman.
Batman's the bottom half of the screen.
Yeah, it's an uppercut, and this is the most...
Upper cunt is the correct, I believe.
Oh, I trust you in all parts of martial arts realms.
It's my expertise.
It looks good because his hand is turned like an uppercut would be. The backside of your hand would face your opponent. Yeah. But there's a lot of other ones where it's like if you did a rock, paper, scissors, but in an upwards direction.
A single upward axe handle smash.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit them like with your thumb and pointer finger, and like it's
like a Star Trek move.
yeah, exactly. I know what you're trying. Yeah, that's what you come up with when you don't know what you're talking about.
That's funny because I'm not really looking at the anatomy of fight scenes, really, or like rather the anatomy in fight scenes. I'm just looking at like the emotion in it,
His arm looks
like, you are not the Robin who died.
Yeah.
In this fight, there's a line that I really like, again, because I thought this design was rad the moment I saw it when I was 2002, I would have been 35. So
what?
No.
We both went in opposite directions there.
I would have been 15. So when I was 15 and I saw this, I just thought that was awesome. And I didn't really have any of the other context. I think I knew that Jason Todd died in general, but I hadn't read that book or anything yet. But he has a line where he's saying to Batman, "You saw me as second rate." Mm-hmm. And I love that combined with this awesome design of like, that's also to the audience of like Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb being like, you didn't like this property that we came up with? Well, fuck you. Here it is in your face. And now it's awesome. And you don't appreciate what we're giving you. very.
in the audience
Let me give you
because
a
it
phone
was
number to call.
because it was exactly because it was a poll. You know, it's like all of you who voted for him to die.
Yeah.
Is this the first time that Jason has come back? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, this was the thing.
So this is like 15 years, maybe? Almost?
Yeah, it was still a bit
that's
before he actually
significant.
came back, because obviously this is not him.
Yeah.
But I think this was maybe the, like, we can do it.
Yeah, planted a
Exploring the
seed.
possibility of him
Yeah.
returning.
Okay.
Wow.
Then all credit where credit's due. I didn't really think about, again, having read so many other things nowadays that like, yeah, this is pretty fucking mind-blowing if you're reading this in the time it was released.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard too unless you read any other articles or something like that to know about something's like significance or something, because now we're reading this stuff backwards. I'm like, yeah, totally. I've seen Jason a bunch of times. Like I just read about him dying not that long ago. So you can't know unless you were there at that time or unless somebody told you after the fact. My family and I watched that recent Elvis movie just in like the last week.
Porn parody?
Yeah.
Creatively titled Elvis Triple X.
Yeah. Elvis Pelvis. I just like knew the guy, the character, the songs or something, but I didn't consider his like significance to race relations or the opposite.
Yeah.
Or his connection
Elvis was a hero to most.
I wasn't there. Now we live in a time where
Even
like,
though you're 70.
I didn't keep up on current things, just like I don't now. And-
Dua Lipa?
Is that one word or two?
Yeah.
Is it a thing or a person? I didn't appreciate that you, ignorant fucks, wouldn't have the same experience that I did.
Totally.
Yeah.
I didn't have like I remember when I was 3 years old and I read him dying, and now
Well,
like,
this-
that wasn't there for me.
This was my first exposure to Jason Todd as well, though, because I read this in 2009, and I, to this day, haven't read Under the Red Hood. I didn't see the film until, 2010 when it came out or something. So this would have been my first exposure to him.
Yeah, the
so
first
as
time
far
that
as I
Jason
know,
Todd
all he does is
exposed himself to
all he does is come back from the dead. As far as I know. You know. All right. So Oracle traces a device.
What do you always got to bring Elvis into everything?
I was quoting Chuck D, by the way, if anyone didn't catch the Public Enemy there.
Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant to me. Yes, he's straight out racist. The sucker was simple and plain. Motherfucking in John Wayne. 'Cause I'm black and I'm proud.
Was he racist?
Doesn't fight the power.
He like stole black people music like so many people did, and he also became extremely wealthy and famous by
For
it.
doing
But
shit
this-
that other people already did.
Yeah.
This movie makes it seem as if he was just a fan of that style of music. Additionally, was the friend of the black community.
It's a little bit like the Eminem thing. I mean, they called him that at the time, where it's like, I love this music and this is what I play, and oh, well, because you're white, let's open all these doors for you
But that's not your fault.
and continue not doing it for the people before
I mean,
you.
so
No,
what
it
he,
isn't. It's
I mean,
column A. It's a
imitation
little
is the
column
greatest
A
form
and
of
B.
flattery. So,
And I didn't see the movie or know anything about Elvis.
and I'm not saying,
So I don't know.
don't just watch a movie and accept it as true.
What I know
but it's a
from-
perspective that I hadn't considered before. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, he just loved this type of music. Why wouldn't you make what you love?
Well, without knowing what he did, I'm sure the common criticism could be like, why didn't you do more for the people whose music that you loved and pulled from?
Exactly.
Why didn't you lift them up too? And like,
And I don't
maybe you
know-
did
I like to
much.
be super critical of people all the time.
And I don't know that he didn't, because you look at some
maybe he
guys
did.
from back then, like Bobby Darin, for example. He had dreamed of playing the Copa. He finally got to play the Copa, and then they wouldn't let his opening comedian play because he was black. And he was like, instead of playing the show, I'm going to arrange a sit-in, and we're going to protest the Copa. So he literally got the first black performer ever at the Copacabana. I don't know what Elvis's relationship is to that. Most of what I know is either how culture in years later looked at him, or what I've read from learning about Johnny Cash and their relationship.
I've just seen the trailer to that movie.
In the movie,
That's your whole Elvis knowledge.
yeah. In
right
the movie,
there.
that he, by the time he gets to the Vegas portion of his career, he has these ideas about having a larger band for the first time, and he wants to make it more of a production. And he puts on like 2 all black bands to be a part of his set.
And that's true too. I mean, we look at people as if they're like one thing, but people change over time. And
For
and
sure.
also
That's
if it,
20 years later or something,
And
so who
also,
knows?
like, if he's homies with BB King, you wouldn't have the same people being like, Yeah, I was friends with him, but he was also a terrible racist.
Well, it's not all one-dimensional, you know.
It's 4-dimensional.
That's
Yeah, it's the quad page.
I've got a black friend. Come on.
I don't see color. That's not.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's why you're wearing a yellow shirt. What is it, fucking Easter?
I'm colorblind. I wouldn't have worn this otherwise.
Says Sam, the best dressed man in the world.
You're wearing like business casual on the top and then basketball on the bottom.
I haven't done laundry in a while.
Flashing yellows.
I think if you're going to rip on somebody, you should rip on them in a department in which you are doing the opposite and excelling in and can't be ripped
I
apart
appreciate that.
in the
'cause
same
you're
dimension.
more of a student of like class and decorum. For me, I feel like if you see an opening, take it.
See, he's
Even
saying
if you're
that-
a piece of shit like Sam.
yeah,
But you-
take
right.
that opening.
but
you're
Evan's
this-
wearing shorts and a t-shirt just like me.
But he pulls it off better. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the hat.
We're essentially dressed the same right now.
You're just seeing that, but I'm going to talk about your camo shorts and then your brightly colored
That's
t-shirt.
what. Yeah.
What about it?
It's just a different.
Those colors don't go together.
Yeah.
It's camouflage. It goes with nothing and everything.
Clearly.
That's why you wear it.
That's the best
'Cause you
argument
never
for
have to
camo I've
change
ever heard
them.
as a fashion statement.
Anyway, Oracle traces a device that they found under the Bat computer where he was looking at the sword, right? After several days, Oracle is able to coerce a meeting. This is somewhat anticlimactic because the reveal is Harold, the guy who used to work in the
The
cave.
character you've never
and
heard
was
of.
such a side character because he never spoke or anything. Like, we never got Harold year one.
He's like, Ace, the
where
bad dog put me up to it. It wasn't me, I promise.
This
Yeah,
is
what
the
the
one
fuck,
time
man?
when my jaw dropped. I was like, oh, shit, they
Right.
did.
And he hasn't appeared in this story once.
Or been mentioned in passing or
Ever.
anything.
Nobody remembers
So-
him at all.
He
They're
was
like, Jim, we got this great story I want you to draw in, Jeff. You need to bring crypto into it. Metropolis has to be there. And
Quasimodo.
Yeah, Quasimodo. Let's talk about that. Man,
Work
go.
it in. I don't know.
I don't know. I'd be more comfortable if we give him some lines this time. Okay, all right. Oh, we will.
Well,
write
Doctor
that
healed
in.
his voice. Okay, here we go.
Can I kill him instantly?
So
Yes.
he was promised that by playing along, he would be healed and regain his ability to speak if he was to cooperate here with Hush. He said that Batman is his hero, which I like. He like knowing you're going to win regardless.
Yeah, that
Nobody
is a
can
nice-
fuck with
nice
you.
touch.
So I played along, essentially using them for using me, right?
You never healed my voice.
Yeah.
Despite all of your money.
Batman offers some empathy here. He's like, dude, I get it. Like, I tried what I could do to help you, give you some purpose.
I let
but
you
like,
live in the cave.
But I could've never
I
done
feel
that.
you, ugly boy. I hid you.
But like, I could have never done that for you. Like,
nice cave.
I don't blame you at all. Totally get it. Bam, bam. 2 shots from off screen, and Harold's dead from Hush.
Was
You
Harold
see him
also
holding the gun.
wearing a trench coat? Is everybody wearing a trench
Yeah,
coat?
pretty much.
There
everywhere
are
with
several.
Jessica.
Croc was wearing one. Jason's wearing one. It's kind of throughout the whole thing.
Gordon.
Oh yeah, right. And I think they do little things like that visually just to continue with the like could be
Ooh,
anybody.
yeah,
You know. Oh no, wait. They mention it at one point.
They do, they
that
talk
even
about-
Bruce Wayne has 3 or 4 of them in his closet,
yeah, yeah.
Which
It's like
seems that
Bruce
seemed
Wayne
that-
would not wear some
Bruce,
fucking
Bruce would have like a Prada
Ross
trench
dress
coat
for
or something.
less.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're so common. Everybody has one, even the billionaires. That's not what billionaires do.
All right, so last issue starts here, 619. Hush monologues during their fight, as comic books tend to do, dropping inside, I don't want to say inside jokes, but like little bits that only they would know. Like Jason sort of did this in the other scene, but like really shit that only you and I were there for when we were 9 years old.
That one time we
you know?
kissed in the locker room.
I showed you mine, you showed me yours, right? They're apparently on the bridge where the Elliots' car crash had occurred when they were kids. Bruce is telling him, like, oh, my dad will save him. Everything will be just fine, right? Batman goes, is that what this is all about? That my dad couldn't save your dad? And Hush says, this is Ben's edgelord shit that he loves.
Tell me about it.
No, I wanted them both dead for the inheritance. And that, actually, our conversation earlier made me think of this. But like, I just instantly cue the fucking Green Day song, Brat. That seemed just out of left field. That was
Yeah,
not
that,
in line with,
I was immediately disappointed.
Jeff, you let me down on that one.
They had enough there to just be like he's another victim of trauma and he was twisted by this terrible thing that happened and went the wrong way. Not like, no, he was the devil child from the beginning. What?
Gordon shows up, guns drawn, with Harvey. Both fire on Hush, who dives into the water like fucking some Joker shit and disappears.
Harvey looks like a yoked Professor X.
Kind of, yeah.
Harvey gives Gordon his old service revolver. He had mentioned earlier that, like, the gun that, quote-unquote, killed Thomas Elliot, that he, like, played along with it, knowing that that, too, was Clayface, and he wasn't actually killing anyone. He says if you exhume the body, you won't find anything but maybe some Clayface residue. Superman comes to the Batcave, and Batman realizes that the relay device in his computer had implanted some kind of subliminal messages of Thomas Elliot, so that when he was in peril, provided that he didn't die or become incommunicable somehow, lucked out on those two, that he would make the connection and he would come to Thomas Elliot for surgery. Batman suspects that he may have implanted something during the surgery, which Superman runs his X-ray vision, confirms this, and burns it out of his skull.
That was cool.
Batman confronts Riddler at Arkham Asylum. This is sort of the epilogue at this point. Having traced Thomas Elliot's medical records, they had been signed out by Arthur Wynn, who was the inventor of the crossword puzzle. Riddler admits to using their Lazarus pit to stave off some kind of terminal cancer that they don't define.
He had brain cancer, maybe.
Which was, it was said with a question mark from Batman. He revels in calling him Bruce, much like Paul Dano. But Batman is confident that Riddler's ego will not permit him to share that. And what good is a riddle that everyone knows the answer?
I've been showing my face to everybody, man. It's like nothing now.
Wait, what was that we read where he was constantly revealing his identity?
Earth 1, he's always like...
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay, I'm Batman.
Everybody, I don't even have a cowl anymore.
Because there's the big reveal at the end of Volume 1, and then they just kept doing it over and over.
Yeah.
I like this with Riddler in the same way that it felt like a Jason Todd redemption of, like, you don't like this character, you're the idiot. Of, like, Riddler was particularly lame in Long Halloween. Yeah,
they would just beat him up and ask his opinions and then throw him to the side again.
This is a nice, like, finishing touch of, like, you thought that's what this was, but no, he's actually the mastermind or part of the whole thing.
He also added as a veiled threat that even if you did get over yourself enough to tell people who I am, there's a certain League of Assassins that would love to know who was behind getting Talia involved in all this shit. So if you don't want Roz up your ass, then maybe keep that to yourself. It's crazy to make the Riddler in continuity aware of Bruce Wayne's identity. That's crazy.
Like 7 or 8 years later, they probably did some kind of like two anti-negative universe gods smashed together and rewrote that. So
yeah, that's pretty bold. Whew. Batman and Catwoman recap, debrief, whatever. She says the word hush. Like when he's talking, she's like, hush, come on. All of a sudden, he's like, why did you say that name? Thinking, oh shit, was she in on this? Like, I don't know who I can trust at this point. So many people were manipulated, mind games, mind control, all this shit. She just sees a look on his face and like, oh, it's fucking over, huh? Yep. All right. Well, hey, I'll be ready when you're ready. Bye. And that's kind of our ending.
I didn't really like that part. It made me feel like they wasted my time with this love story stuff. And then also it made me think like, if stuff hasn't gone good for you multiple times, and I'm just pretending that this is like all the same universe and you're getting older the entire time, how long are you gonna... She's like, I'll always be here.
No,
like,
they're
how
perpetually like 28 to 32.
Yeah. But
they're old.
But in my head, they're like, they're getting older because time is passing and they're getting older. And like, how long would you wait around for this?
Compressed time like a motherfucker.
Peter Parker's still teaching high school, fresh out of college.
Yeah.
I imagine you really didn't like the show Friends. That's a whole lot of will they, won't they with Batman and Catwoman. That's kind of the fun of it.
To me, it feels kind of the same way that Three Jokers did, where like they introduced this Jason Todd, Barbara Gordon romance subplot, introduce it, let it sit for a bit, and then immediately resolve it in a way so that if they want to fold this into continuity, all characters can act as if none of this ever happened.
I think there's a better way to do what they did here. Because like I said, introducing this romance, solidifying
sex
it
scene at least.
during all
Yeah.
this shit. No. I mean like the undoing of it. Because I don't mind that it didn't pan out this time. I like that it planted the seeds that like, okay, this really does have a shot in the future, right? There's enough indications here that this isn't some flirty rooftop fling thing anymore, like it was in Long Halloween, right? But for me, I didn't love the Riddler thing. Okay, again, here's Harold. Where's he been this whole story, right? It just felt a little bit like, okay, so Thomas Elliot fakes his own death like Alberto, right? Turns out to be the guy, but then not be the guy. And then when they catch him as the guy, he gets away. And the other one who was the guy was Two-Face, and he turned immediately like.
And then also Clay.
It ends up, it's like too convoluted to be clever.
There's too much. I think they should have stuck it out with Thomas Elliot, done the whole fucking fake your death thing, stick the comic book ending, and simplify.
Well, I want to clarify on the Riddler comment. I don't really like that either. I just like the idea of like
treating him better.
Yeah, because he's as important as anyone.
And I do like the stalemate in the conversation about like, you think you have this thing, you don't really have this thing. If you choose to let that out, there's repercussions. So it kind of doesn't go anywhere, but otherwise I do not. Like, had we not seen the Riddler the one other time, they would have just been another example of them like busting out a person.
Here's the thing, you would never know.
Yeah, here's the guy that you never expected because we didn't show him to you at all. And he's the mastermind between the like.
I know you've complained about this, Ben, about having storytelling crutches that you've seen too much, like with flashbacks used in a certain way and things like that.
Yeah, well, because
that's one of them
Red
for
Hood,
me.
The intro
because,
to that.
I mean, they're detective stories, right? There's mystery stories. There's only so many ways you can do it, but
especially with the same elements over and over.
Yeah, but when you try to go, look over here, 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 it's like, yo, that's like 3 too many, Just juke me out, do the one good bamboozle, or 2.
Phantasm just popped into my head as like, that's a good way to do that.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
I watched it in the theater yesterday thinking, this is just a perfect story.
It's tight.
It's so good. I was thinking, how crazy is it that 2/3 of the way into that movie, you introduce the fucking wacky, zany cartoon Mark Hamill Joker, and it doesn't radically change the tone of the film? Like, holy shit, that's such an accomplishment, right?
And even in that, like, it's such a good slow burn reveal of the past.
Yes.
The stuff with Andrea is more like it's a misdirect to kind of present it in a way that makes it seem like it could not be her. Then the only actual character misdirect is this like past Joker reveal. Whoa.
Yeah.
Then that ends up not being the case. That's so much less convoluted than all of this crap that they're presenting to me in this.
Yeah. And I think that's just a casualty of trying to use so many characters.
Yes.
And the month-to-month format, I think, is the other thing. Because that's stretching this out over a year. I mean, I can imagine people would have the same reaction that we're having right now.
Yeah.
But it might be different when it's just like the thing that tides you over between this month of your life.
I mean, it's a massive success, obviously, for what they were trying to do and for the time that it was published.
These guys are hacks.
So
I can't
many
imagine
things.
they worked after this.
Washed up has-beens.
But yeah, I think as it goes further and further along, like you made your bed. And you're like, oh, shit. Okay, back myself in a corner a little bit. We got to do this real quick and that real quick. Like, I just recapped how many main characters in like 2 paragraphs. That's a lot.
It's funny how in retrospect, previously groundbreaking things can be like cheesy.
Sure.
Again, the benefit of being there in the moment, like
I was,
oh my God, no one's ever done this before.
When Citizen Kane came out and I was there and I was like, this
holy shit.
You're at the premiere.
These movies are going to be big, I tell you.
Your grandchildren are going to talk about this.
But like at some point, say 50 years removed, this will look like old school Batman, Superman to us. It'll be that cheesy.
It's interesting because you could see how the Long Halloween series informed this, and you can also see how this informed shit that happens now.
And I think as a not necessarily as a counterpoint, but as just a thing to remember as well. Some things are timeless, and even if they do like betray the era they're from in stylistic ways, still hold up very, very well. Not that this doesn't hold up, but like it's. As the things we've complained about, I think are valid criticisms.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that this is easily a 5-star book in 2002 and 3.
Yeah.
And then we may have different opinions when we come to rate this at the end of the show.
7-year-old me reading this at Barnes & Noble was like, this is insane.
Even if you were 36-year-old, you reading it for the first time, it would be like, holy fuck.
Were you like, holy fuck?
Well, no, but he's removed from time. Like, he wasn't in that time that it was published.
Oh, okay.
18-year-old
I'm
me
saying
can
if
read
you
this.
haven't read the books that existed after this, doesn't matter your age, you're going to be like, holy shit.
Sure.
The gripes that I have with this, if somebody was pulling off those same things tomorrow, same gripes. It's just something that you're doing that I don't like.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like these beats, and I don't like the bushels of information that you're throwing at me. And that's so. If anybody was doing that,
Speaking of words no one has ever put together before, I think.
bushels of information. That's what I'm here for.
Tell me about any Easter eggs that we haven't commented on.
When you see Lois at her desk, and I didn't look this up to see if it actually was a thing, but when Lois is at her desk, there's a newspaper in the back that says Jeff Loeb to do Mr. Miracle.
Nice. Can I add one?
Yes.
You mentioned Lois and the Planet, and I forgot that there's a bit in there where she does like how many P's in Rapist or something like that,
Yeah.
which is straight from, I remember if it was 1 or 2, but it was in one of the Donner movies where she's terrible at spelling and she asked that specific question.
Oh,
and
that's
like,
funny.
In this case, Clark pops his head over and it's like, oh, it's just 1 P, you know.
Therapist, rapist was the headline.
Right. She goes, oh yeah, the rapist, therapist, blah, blah, blah. That was like a fucking Celebrity Jeopardy bit at one point too.
That's funny.
I'll take the rapists for 200. That's therapist.
After actually the same page that I looked at before, but after the surgery, it's got Tommy with his hands and close face when he's outside with the people, and you clearly have Lois and Jimmy on the right side, but to the left side looks like a Peter Parker to me.
Oh,
Brown hair, glasses, camera.
that's cool.
Yep. When Catwoman and Harley are fighting behind the backdrop in the theater, Harley says, "Heavens to Murgatroyd."
Yeah.
Marvin the Martian.
I actually laughed at that.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have any?
Just in the origin scene, it's both the throwback to he's like Dexter. He's got his chemist cloak on with like rubber gloves holding a beaker. And behind him is math and science like illuminated on the wall.
The words.
Essentially. Yeah. And then underneath that, it's the shot of him bench pressing insane weight. Like that's just also the very classic, like that's how you show he studied science and worked on his body is he did those two things. He held a beaker up and he benched.
Oh,
yeah, you love the beakers in the montage.
Yeah,
The third thing would have been him doing like the Iron Cross on the whatever it is on the ring.
Hitting a tire with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So that was there.
I meant to count the bench press.
There were 4 enormous plates on either side.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of weight.
Yeah, I meant to do the math and see like what the world record was for bench pressing.
In the croc fight, not quite an Easter egg, but I still just appreciated it. In the same way that I was like, they put all the fan service sexy shots together. There's one scene
Of Sexy Croc?
Yes. Look at that tongue, man. No. Where they're fighting and like onomatopoeia is not the right word, but it's like the words for sound effects, which maybe is onomatopoeia.
It is.
In one single 2-page chunk, there's wham, brack, dushk, slack, badock, and watok. Like when I was like, that's incredible.
Wow.
The vocabulary on this man.
Because then after that later, it's like slam and smash, like regular stuff. But in those 2 pages,
I was really inspired.
yeah.
There's also an incredible amount of faps in this.
I saw a couple faps for sure.
There were many faps. And
Ben had a few extras, but
Yeah, this
I
must
noticed
have
some too.
not been a thing in the past.
There's
No.
a Robin building in a long shot. Somebody's swinging away and there's a big building, a skyscraper, and it just says Robin on it.
Nice.
Oh, I did see that.
I thought you meant like Build-A-Bear, like there was Robin building.
Well, they really built Robin from the ground up.
I'm glad that you guys had those because I had actually integrated my Easter eggs in the conversation this time, which I don't usually do.
Which is a better way to do it. I got to tell you, when you talk, I'm only half paying attention sometimes. So when it comes to lists, I'm gone. No, that's a mean thing to say. The Bat computer has ears.
You're supposed
Has
to
bat
revel
ears.
in the mean things you say. That's the
You can
show.
edit a longer pause
We
in
have
there if you
fun.
want.
Yeah, this is the way.
So the Bat computer has like bat ears. And we didn't really talk about it because maybe it'll come up in prose. just that amazing Batcave shot with all the different Batmobiles for different eras.
You know
some of
what's
which have faces.
Funny is seeing that now. I was like, oh yeah, fuck. I remember this was like the mind-blowing Batcave spread back then, and it is just so like simple now. Like
Compared to all the ones we've seen.
Yeah, it's great. Like think about like Sean Murphy's with 6 or 8 Batmobiles in it, and
I think there are that many in this. A lot of them are just far away and
for sure
small.
Yeah, I specifically hit that page and went, oh shit, this is like a blast from the past, like simpler times, you know?
Do you think the cave smells like a cave, or does it smell better than that because it's like a billionaire's cave?
And there's a lot of fresh water running through it all the time, which might like aerate a little bit. But there's guano everywhere, I would think.
Yeah, it smells like sweat and bat turds.
But you don't see a lot of poops on the ground. Nobody ever illustrates
Alfred
any
has
poops.
to be in there every day. He's forced to clean that all up.
They've got like netting above the computer so it doesn't shit in the back of the monitors and stuff, you know?
Without getting super political,
Uh-oh.
I had let me tell you about abortion, guys. I'm pretty sure an audible chuckle when they were like, Lex Luthor, one of the biggest villains in DC, was forced to divest his holdings when he became president because even a supervillain would have to play by the rules. And like,
I caught that as well.
You can't own a business and be president at the same time. That's unethical, and we're not going to stand for it.
I forgot to write that down, but yeah. Yep. Excellent.
Does that have some sort of
Our
relevance
last
to real
president
life?
didn't do that.
Oh,
that was a big deal.
Okay.
I won't tell you what I think of him. I'll just say
It happened.
There's a Harley joke that I liked, which was, yeah, and people in ice water want hell. And I like flipping them
Wait,
around.
I didn't catch that.
If
That's
somebody
funny.
says like, you got to do this or I want this. Maybe Catwoman says, I want this or something. And that's her response. People in ice water want hell.
That's a great line. Pros?
I really like, it'll be like a single panel in which they will draw the figures multiple times. I'm thinking again of
Like in motion.
Yeah, like the theater fight, and they're behind the set, and they're showing how they're
Harley's
like moving
bouncing
from the
around and
left.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. And the not current frame, everything before it will have been like a slightly lighter color. It gets like an outline. It doesn't get motion lines like it's whooshing or something. You're seeing like the illustrated frames of a cartoon within a single panel or something. And I really like, because comic is full of like, how did you get from here to here?
Yeah.
Or movie shots that just show hands and faces, you know, but I like seeing all of it. And so when you have just the full motion, I like that a lot.
And I like that it shows the skill of the illustrator, because it shows that they had to
For sure.
account for the physical
How to
movement
get from
of this
here to
character,
here.
what their body looks like in these situations.
Totally. Like an animator's skill level versus somebody just drawing single panels or something. Like
picture something neat and they can draw it and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Or you have, well, I'm good at the front and the profile and the 3/4, but everything else in between I can't really pull off. But
Feet are not my strong
Beavis.
suit.
yeah, in animation you can't hide from that stuff. You know, you have to show all the steps in between.
I noticed that really from the beginning when they introduced Catwoman, she stole the ransom. They're hopping across rooftops, whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely a nod to Long Halloween. And when I was at the Tim Sale panel at Emerald City recently, it was like Richard Starkings and Mark Chiarello, the editor from this, and a number of people who worked with him, and they talked about how in some of those serious dark Batman story or whatever, but he would have momentary homages to Looney Tunes in the like Catwoman jumping across the roof shit. And they showed an example, and I can't remember specifically what it was, but it sort of has that feeling of them like bouncing across from this to that, and showing the middle makes it almost look a little more like silly, fun, cartoony, even though everything is
jumped to a
rendered very
wall,
straight.
like 8 feet up, and then jumped off that wall another 8 feet up to a
Yeah.
balcony. That's Looney Tune shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, and there's that one cool panel that is like the Long Halloween panel where it's Jim drawing purple suit Catwoman. I don't remember at what point it is, but I like it.
Oh, it's a flashback. to,
right.
like,
Yeah, it's just like a
met
single
her.
rooftop flashback.
No, it's him remembering how she's like, how did you get this scar? Because it's her scar.
Oh yeah, like you.
You idiot. That's
Yeah.
you.
Gee, I don't know, bitch.
Which one of my villains has cat claws?
I like the Batman 614 cover where he's choking Joker a lot. Jim does like a good maniacal, overly detailed Joker face.
The busted teeth and shit.
Yeah.
It's a little phantasm, actually.
Maybe it was a little bit too much with the watercolor flashbacks and stuff, but I did still like seeing, because I knew that he was doing it. It's cool just in a skill set way. Like, cool. It's tight that you can do
I've never
that
seen him
and
do that.
this. And yeah, okay, nice. And particularly, there's like one page and one panel where he's having the Batgirl flashback.
Yeah.
And it's them at the top coming at you, and he and her and the sky are painted in, and then the background is just left as like black line art. And I think that that's very cool. It's just a neat high contrast thing. And then also, while it didn't happen in the story, and maybe this actually might have been a cooler thing to do for the flashbacks rather than the watercolor, but for the first time, the iconic cover that has like the split that shows, Joker and Ivy and top right and whomever else.
Yeah.
The villains and then the heroes.
Yeah. The background is just the colored version of pencils. Yes, exactly.
Oh, I was thinking of something different. Sorry.
Yeah, that one.
It's the cover of the trade.
Yeah, so no inks, just pencils scanned and colored.
And sort of like washed over, not like detail colored. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not really darkening the pencils or anything like that. And previously, I felt like I'd only seen Joe Mad do that in stuff. I think at that point, it was like the company Liquid that was coloring his stuff. But seeing like that influence seep into more mainstream comics. And it's actually a thing that I wish people would do more frequently too, because I do think the inking stuff is really tight, but I also think that just preserving the pencils as pencils and then coloring them is really cool.
Especially if you can do it in a way that works in the story. Like we're talking about like dream sequences or something like that.
Pros, Ben?
I mean, my pros list is not particularly detailed, and I like this book. And this might be another casualty of having read it for the first time so long ago, where a lot of like the punch was robbed.
Yeah.
I mean, that artwork is stellar, and just the reintroduction of Jason Todd, I liked a lot. I like that design.
It's interesting because it's not one of those things like I'll watch a movie or read a book a million times if I really love it. But this one is so dense and so long. It's not one of those that you can just go back to all the time, or it would feel laborious to a certain extent, I mean, I really like everything about the foundation of the story. I mean, the type of story is being told, the detective stuff. I love Jim's artwork, period. He's just one of my favorites. Seeing a different point in their evolution than the last time we read from this team. I like that we have psychological and physical threats. I like just the characterization of everybody, the way that Batman thinks, the way each person is used for the most part, particularly in the first half of the story, I think. Cons.
Too much stuff for me.
Unnecessarily so.
Yeah, and I don't appreciate the whole...
I don't appreciate you making me sit through this.
No, I didn't waste my time or something. I like exposing myself to new stuff.
He loves exposing himself.
Yep, there we
know
go.
this.
Man, this is a real theme.
I want you to understand what's in store for you.
Yeah, if you're listening to season 3, there will be 10% more dick jokes, 20% more fucks. No.
I wrote the Riddler ending, but I already talked about that. The only other thing that I didn't really like was how monotonous Batman's internal monologue is. It was like akin to old comics where he's like telling me about all this stuff that I know, like in the beginning he says, dude's rib is busted, so I punch it.
Yeah.
And we talked about how like some of that data stuff is kind of funny, but I don't need you telling me like, I jumped off the curb. I'm like, clearly you jumped off the curb. There's no details in here. But more than that, it was like, and they do this in manga too, where it's like the first page or something will be kind of like a redrawn version of the last page of the last chapter.
Yeah.
And so they're like, just in case, but which is even more ridiculous.
And that just is the format. Like you also got to think about this series was so huge that it progressively got newer and newer readers as it went. Like each issue started getting bigger than the last.
You want to hold on to
and so
all
this
of
is
them.
kind of a cultural moment where it was like, oh, I heard about this. Oh, the fucking new, let me grab that one.
Sure.
And so they do have to contextualize it more.
I think also
So I forgive for that.
yeah, totally. And we don't have, again, the benefit of reading it at that time. I'm just going through it. Part of what seems silly to me about whenever this happens, though, is thinking that somebody else is thinking this stuff. It's like a narrative bubble that isn't Batman's thought.
Yeah.
If it's the unseen narrator, it makes more sense. Like, hey, fans, just in case you forgot, last week. But if I'm thinking that this is actually how
Batman
thinks to himself, he actually is a crazy person.
Hey, I mean, obsessive thoughts are sometimes intrusive and unwanted. That's part of the definition. So.
Yeah, all he's managed to do is focus them on a goal. He still has them.
Yeah. It's a lot of replay value with OCD, let me tell you. I will go into my cons by just saying the flashback artwork, again, I didn't love. The fake killing of Thomas is the exact same as Alberto Falcone. It just was. It had the same payoff in the end. It occurred at the same point in the story, roughly. Again, just tying up the ending, not only too busy, but letting this character you spend so much time developing just be like, not me, oh, it is me, bye, and jump away and escape. It was just like, man, I would rather have an epilogue of him in a cell, him on trial, him dying, a Thomas and Bruce out of costume, like
Interaction.
one in the jumpsuit and one in the three-piece or whatever, actually having a dialogue or something, like some more emotional payoff, because this whole thing did have a personal thread from beginning to end, and it turned a little too much into just like wham bang action and didn't see that coming, at the end.
Is Thomas in anything else ever again?
Yeah. But I feel like there was never a payoff in the way the story set him up. I haven't read everything, but
I haven't read anything but this, but I've heard very good things about Heart of Hush, which is actually
read the Bible. He's just read Hush.
written by Paul Dini. So I'm very interested to read that, and maybe we'll do it on the show.
Also,
Yeah, shut your mouth, Ben.
I can't. I can't remember.
Evan shushes you this time.
I can't remember, but in Jim's epilogue at the end, he's talking about how the whole thing was hush hush, and that kind of became part of it, that they were trying to keep this whole storyline under the wraps and all this stuff. But does he ever get called Hush in the comic?
It might be in the Joker Two-Face thing or prior to that. Yeah, it's said at some point between other characters.
Okay. What I thought was funny was you don't need to have a suit if you're a one-time villain, I don't think. And also, what is people's insistence on like having their letters and logos and stuff on their thing rather than just like wearing clothes? Why does he have to have a couple H's on his uniform?
Oh yeah, the like undersuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under the trench coat.
Yeah.
You don't
that,
need to.
That didn't need to be there.
You
You're
could
right.
be wearing anything.
Yeah. Like, you got this made?
I mean, I complained about it before, but that is really one of the hugest cons and the biggest disappointments of my life, I would say.
Yeah, you complain a lot, actually.
The reveal that he was evil as a child, and that's really what it was. It's not that you couldn't save my dad, it's that you saved my mother, so I didn't get my money right away. Like, that was such...
Also, like, I'm extremely wealthy and famous now.
Yeah, you're fine.
So
Yeah.
I have everything I wanted.
Yeah,
is
I mean,
Batman.
part of me, yeah, exactly. Part of me would say like,
Well, no,
Well,
because
until he
Batman's
doesn't have his parents.
trauma
I mean-
had nothing to do with wealth. If Tommy's goal was strictly to get the inheritance,
Oh, he did
and then
get
he
it.
grew up wildly
It's
more
like,
successful than his parents.
I'm really fucking mad at you, Batman, because
Yeah,
I had to
yeah.
wait until like my 14th birthday before I got all the money. I still lived like a very rich person,
Yeah.
but I didn't get it as my own until way later.
there is no trauma because he desired for his parents to pass. He wouldn't be traumatized by
Yeah,
that.
yeah, because I mean, that's a symptom of the bigger problem with it. And I do think this is, again, like the challenge of having to incorporate something that exists in a bigger continuity of like those stories just going to keep going without you now.
Yeah.
Somebody else has to run with this. And I didn't read the forward or the afterward. I don't know if like, were they tasked with creating a new character?
No.
So they just had free reign and they did that?
Yeah, Chiarello approached Loeb, and it was sort of open-ended to him the way that he presented it here.
Because that
they're
makes
like
it
issued a
worse.
challenge.
That makes it worse to me. Because if it was the idea of like, we want you to make a character, then this ending is better for that. Because it's like, we made him and he got away and now he just, other
exists.
people, he can be a tool for other writers if they come up with an interesting way to incorporate him.
I know that I love standalone stories, and I always say that, but like, you could do that in continuity where you bring in somebody like this who's important for a while and dies off. I mean, and you can still comic book him back in later if you really
or
want
even
to.
just refer to him like, oh man, that really fucked me up when Thomas Elliot came back into my life and I thought I had a friend. Or
Do you think when you read those earlier issues, is that all misdirect? You think this kid was a psycho just because he fucking lashed out a few times, and you got to think like your enemy in the way that he talks sometimes? Like, I don't think.
None of that seems psychotic to me at all. They just seem like kids.
Yeah, like Ben needs a science montage. I need to see somebody like torturing animals.
Yeah, show me that. Give me
Show
some
me
hint
he's
that he was
evil.
You
actually-
want to watch torturing animals. Got it. All right.
only
mental
when it's
note.
drawings.
Really detailed Jim Lee drawings. No, I wonder if that was always in mind, or if they just had a rough idea of like, oh, what if, and then he becomes the guy, and like, yeah, okay, that's cool, because it seems so out of left field.
Well, and
Yeah,
it's
I wish
not-
people wouldn't do that if that's the case.
One, it's not the only Batman story, and it's also not the only comic book story that does this. And again, to me, it seems like it's because they have to work it into a bigger story. But we're like, without spoiling things, like Batman Murderer, and Batman Fugitive, is
Bruce Wayne Murderer.
Bruce Wayne Murderer is another story that I feel very similarly about, where like the setup is great.
I've heard good things
and like
about
the
it.
first third, or maybe even the first half, is great, and then it slowly starts to just like morph into status quo, both in effort and like the execution of it, but also in the quality of the story and the beats of the story,
Yeah.
which makes me think it's a bigger problem of trying to manage this whole universe.
Dini is a writer that we praise a lot, and he excels in the short form. And I just wonder if once in a while, like, we've read a lot of Jeff Loeb. We've read Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Superman, Batman, and now this. I wonder if he would just crush it in a 3-part miniseries or something like that, you know? Like,
I
does
think he would do the exact same things in an even more condensed version.
No, because like
Jeff
like
Loeb
he said
wrote a
about
bunch of TV, either during this or after this. I think he worked on like Smallville. He worked on a bunch
Oh,
of
right, he
stuff.
did. Yeah.
So he sort of did do short form in that way.
I would love to read a Batman story from him that's just a little more focused. It's not quite such a wide scope, you know? Fewer characters, because he's very good at finding heart and meaning, and again, giving the perfect characterization and motivation for each person.
Yeah,
the way they
appropriate to their
talk, the way they
histories.
think.
Yeah.
You know, really the way they think. He's very, very good, but there's always like we get caught up in the third act of a lot of these going, yeah, but then it kind of gets goofy, you know?
Yeah, the story itself is like what's lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when this came out, this was a 5-star book, no question, right? But right now, we're reading in 2022, and this is just for the sake of conversation. These are all things that we love. How does this hold up in 2022?
3 could maybe go lower than that, but I don't feel like
Wow.
being a butthead.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to say 3.5, but when the nicest person says 3, I feel
wow.
safer in saying, yeah, maybe a 3.
Really?
It's probably was a 5 then.
Yeah.
Me then reading it at that time. But yeah, all the things we talked about, I mean, those are like serious issues, despite everyone involved being excellent at what they do.
Yeah, the team is great.
Yeah, this falters.
Yeah, I'd put it at a 4. I was comfortable with that because it's gorgeous to look at. It's got a lot of great story in it. But yeah, you know, it's not without its issues. Well, 20 years of Hush. If you guys haven't read it, I don't know why you listen to this, but check it out. I am going to be buying that anniversary edition. It comes out, I think the day before my birthday in October. So
yeah, we get it. You
look forward for that. Yeah,
Everything's all about you.
most people do, actually, from what I've noticed.
I just thought of this. In Jim's thing in the end, he was talking about how, I don't know how long it was, but say like a year or something before like issue 1 even released. So they're...
Oh, yeah, that they had time to
yeah,
actually
they actually had
fine-tune
time to
it.
do like redraws and stuff. But the fact that he said that made me think that it was only reworking the drawings. And it's funny, granted, they everybody must have just been like, this is a great story. I fucking love it. That it was only the drawings that got reworked,
story.
and nobody was like, maybe less or something. That's all
No,
they got
Harold.
revamped.
I
He's
always
gotta
wanted to
be
draw
there.
Crypto, and I
He's
always wanted to draw
critical.
Harold.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if the whole arc was done. I don't think that's ever the case. He even made mention at one point that, like, I wanted to prove that I could hit those monthly deadlines. I knew that I could do it, but I'd be very surprised if they had more than, a few issues ready to go. Deadlines are a big thing in comics,
This is Robin. Thanks for checking out the Bat Fanatic podcast with Sammy Warm Hands.
All right, that is our show. Huge thanks for your patience from season 2. Took a longer break than we had hoped, but wanted to come back with a big fat fucking episode to kick off season 3. Hope you had a good time with it. As always, if you're a fan of the show, if you like what we do, just pull up your app, give us that 5-star rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you're not following us on Instagram, I post sketches, comics, autographs, hot toys, and we do giveaways for many of those things as well. So follow us at BatFanAddict, ADDICT, on Instagram. We will be back as we alternate from comics to film with Batman the Animated Series, the Emmy Award-winning classic episode, Heart of Ice. Stay tuned.